Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. May I have the roll call, please?
Chair McGill,
Here.
Vice Chair Clark,
Here.
Commissioner Aldana,
Present.
Commissioner Lesner-Buxton,
You.
Commissioner Nielsen,
Present.
Commissioner Price,
Present.
Commissioner Ramsey.
Here.
All right, thank you very much. And before we get going with the meat of the agenda, which is a big one today, I am happy to say that we are once again a fully staffed commission. We have 3 new commissioners that I would like to welcome. And I will get past this part of reading very quickly, I promise you. We have Rob Nielsen, I wrote John Price, not Nielsen, and Mike Ramsey. So I'd like to welcome all of you, and we really look forward to working with you on the commission these next few years. Before we go, if any of you would like to say a word of hello and introduce yourselves and why you're here, we would love to hear from you. So I will start over here, if you are willing.
Thank you for the welcome. It's a pleasure to serve with you guys. I look forward to try to honor our community here and do right by the Parks and Rec Department.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Price.
Hi, everybody. The parks were the reason I chose to move to Santa Barbara, so I'm really excited to have an opportunity to give back to my community and really try and honor the work that's been done by the city to create this wonderful infrastructure.
Thank you. Commissioner Ramsey.
Hi, everyone. Michael Ramsey. I'm just very honored to be serving on this board, and the goal is to leave the city in a better place than we found it, so let's do some good work.
Thank you. All right. I think we have one change to the agenda, rearranging, but any changes to the agenda to?
Yeah, Chair McGill and members of the commission, we would like to take item 6, the advisory committee interviews, prior to the street tree advisory committee item. So we'll take items 1 through 3 and then go to 6 and then come back to item 4. We have, I think, 3 or 4 members who are here that will interview for the advisory committee positions.
Yeah, and we've got enough on the agenda that I think it's good to get them,
Yes.
get through the interviews first. I agree with that for sure. Commissioner Aldana?
Yeah, I just want to make a suggestion. Can A1 and D1 be done at the same time? Because I'm going to have to excuse myself. Rather than excusing myself twice.
Oh, he's asking, can we do the designation change at the same time as we do 4A1? And then he can sit out the designation change as well. I don't think that's necessary, personally.
Suggestion, anyways.
Chair McGill, Commissioner Aldana, I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessary.
However, we can certainly do those one after the other
You okay with that, Nathan?
and then come back.
Okay. Okay, thanks. All right, and so then that takes us to written public comment. We've got a number of letters, but they're all on agenda items, the trees, and I didn't see anything other than that. Was there?
No, Chair McGill, other than what I've provided you, there's been no new.
Okay, great, thank you very much. And that takes me to public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the commission. The total amount of time for public comment will be 15 minutes. Those of you who have given me slips for the tree items, that will come later on. So I don't have any public comment slips. Is anything from either of you? Nope. Nope. Anybody on Zoom?
Chair McGill, we do have someone on Zoom. For those wishing to speak during public comment, please use the raise your hand functionality in the Zoom control panel. When I call on you, please unmute yourself and then speak for a maximum of 2 minutes. For those who wish to speak on an agenda item later in the meeting, please raise your hand when the item is under discussion. Do I have anyone in Zoom wanting to speak? There are no hands raised.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, and that takes us to our youth council report. I know we have one this month. So not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Welcome. Before you introduce yourself and get going, I've had one question asking about what it is you do. So if you have 2 sentences about who it is and what you do, and then you can do your report, that would be great.
Okay, so me personally, or like as a
group.
council? As a group, okay. As a group, we
And
are.
I'm sorry, and your name, and could you introduce yourself too?
My name is Carlos Vasquez, and I'm the parliamentarian at the Santa Barbara Youth Council.
Okay, thank you.
And kind of what we do as a group is focusing on advocating for the voices of youth in the community and making sure that their voices are heard, and that their opinions are, valued as we go forward through different, city actions and stuff like that. Yeah. All right, and so the Youth Council resumed our meeting schedule on January 6th, 2025, and we welcomed 2 new voting members. So one, and then on top of that, a new non-voting junior high member. And then we are working on 2 main projects currently, the Harriet Miller Youth Leadership Award and the Youth Speak Out. So for the Harriet Miller Youth Leadership Award, applications opened on Friday, January 17th, and is due on February 5th. Eligibility requirements include that at the time of the application, students are a senior in the Santa Barbara district, have a minimum of a 2.5 GPA, 45 hours of community service, and are able to attend a downtown organization annual awards ceremony on February 19th. Our lead partner, the downtown organization, issued a press release, and our advisor has communicated that this opportunity to the school district and other youth groups, posted it and as well as we posted it on our Instagram. And so youth council members have shared this opportunity within our own networks, encouraging our peers to apply. And our role in this collaboration is to identify the recipient of the award so that every member receives an equal opportunity to be awarded. We formed a small ad hoc subcommittee that will, they're non-seniors, and that will review the applications and select a winner. And this with the assistance of our advisor. So this ad hoc subcommittee was also responsible for creating new application prompts, since previous years we had feedback that they were a little bit too similar. And so we came up with what does leadership mean to you, and what motivates you to be a leader, as well as what is an issue in the community that you would like to prioritize with your leadership, and how are you using your leadership to make an impact. We encourage eligible students to apply by completing the application and answering the prompts in a 250 to 500 word essay. Applications can be found on the Downtown Organization website or on our Instagram page. And then lastly, the Youth Speak Out event. So this is an event that we hold annually, and we continue to plan this event for 2025, for March of 2025, and we welcome students 7th through 12th grade who want to create positive change in their community and meet other teen leaders and leaders in our community. And so we have broken this up into 4 main topics anti-discrimination, public spaces for teens, mental wellness, and environment and sustainability. And so our events will be a hybrid format modeled after the Youth Speak Outs from past years. The first half of the event will be centered around discussion, where students can brainstorm questions and ideas together. And then the second half will be a panel style where attendees can take brainstormed information and ask experts questions. And so for our advisor is working with us to assist us in securing panelists that can speak to the importance of our chosen topics. And so we are patiently waiting the results of the Youth Making Change grant, which would hopefully fund this event. And that's it. That's all I have. Thank you for your time. And can I answer any questions that the commission may have?
Commissioner Price.
Thank you very much for your report. You're obviously doing a lot in the community. I would like to know, what can we do to support you and make you successful?
That is a great question. We are focused on, we want to kind of bridge the gap between city council and the adults in our community and the youth, who I feel like are pretty separated. And so maybe if we had, I don't know, just whatever we could do to connect Parks and Rec and the rest of the city council to youth, and maybe they can see how this kind of city government works. So I'm not sure exactly how that would work, but something where, yeah, the students can see firsthand what this type of structure is like. This type of city. Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Aldana.
Yeah, just want to congratulate you on your great work and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a pleasure to hear the Youth Council report, and you're hitting the ground running, no surprise there. You didn't exactly pick trivial topics for the Speak Out, and to have 4 of them is pretty ambitious, so I really look forward to hearing the report back, and I'm sure you'll get some really good feedback and conversation. Yep, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. So with that, we move on to the Commissioner Committee assignment reports. And next month, I believe, we will do the 2025 assignments with the new members and for the ones that are vacant. So we'll just move through the current ones. So that'd be Commissioner Aldana.
Nothing to report this month.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Clark.
Yeah, likewise, the Street Tree Advisory Committee, their schedule's a little different because of when the year fell, so I wasn't able to go to the meeting, but I did visit all the trees.
Okay, thanks. And Commissioner Lesnar Buxton.
Nothing to report here.
Okay, so as far as I was unable to go to the Integrated Pest Management Team meeting, committee meeting. We did have a Park Foundation meeting last week where we were really progressing plans for engaging activities in the band shell. I represented the commission at the Anapamu Stone Pine appeal a couple weeks ago. That is in our report. And then this noon, we actually had, for the first time in a long time, a meeting of the De La Guerra Plaza Revitalization Arts and Culture Subcommittee. Got that, Courtney? And which was really great to get re-engaged with that, and it's really picked up the conversation on public art in the De La Guerra Plaza as it goes forward. And that's, okay, takes us to commission and staff communications.
Chair McGill, members of the commission, nothing in addition to what you'll already hear as part of today's agenda, but also a staff welcome to our new commissioners, and it's a new calendar year. We have a lot of things that'll be coming up on your agenda, and as the days get longer, we'll look forward to having the opportunity to do some site visits to our various parks and recreation facilities.
Yeah, which would be fabulous. And then that takes us to ceremonial items. The employee recognition, do we have any service awards this month?
Yes, Chair McGill, members of the commission, we have 2 employees that were recognized for 20 years of service. For our new commissioners, the first Tuesday of every month, the city administrator lists out employees from 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, sometimes 30, sometimes more years of service. Those are considered milestones for city employees. We had 2 that were recognized by the city administrator in January, Juan Olmedo and Gabe Caratachea. I always stumble over his name. Both of them served 20 years, both of them in our Parks Division. They're super valuable to our department. They have a long history with park maintenance and management activities, and we're very pleased that they're still with us. And also, their experience is helping us train the next generation of Parks employees as well.
Yeah, thank you, and congratulations to both of them. I mean, as you will no doubt learn quite quickly, Parks and recreation, but Parks does a lot with very few people. And so the people that work as hard as they do to keep everything green and growing and available for the public, you know, it's a great service that they do to the community. So congratulations. That takes us to the summary of council actions. I think it's all fairly straightforward unless anybody has any questions. All right. And then minutes with the recommendation that the commission waive the reading and approve the minutes of the regular meeting of December 18th, 2024. Somebody want to move?
Yeah, so moved.
We need a second. I'll second. Okay. So we'll go ahead and vote on that. I think the 3 new members, you'll need to abstain since you weren't commissioners when this meeting happened. Ready to roll? Yep. All right, we got 4, we had a quorum, we're good. All right. All right, now we're going to move on to, okay, now I'm going to have to shuffle paper here for a second. We're going to move on to the, where's my, no, we're not, no, we're moving on to.
Chair Miguel, it's item 6, advisory
Item 6,
committee
advisory
interviews.
committee interviews and appointments. All right, we have, hold on, guys, give me a second. Thank you.
Chair Miguel, while you're organizing your paper, we did have one member for, an applicant for the Street Tree Advisory Committee that has withdrawn his application, and that is Eddie Zhu. So we only have 2 applicants that you'll hear from today.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to suggest, we'll just go through all of the applications and then listen to the interviews, see if anybody has any questions, and then we'll just take a motion and a vote at the end. All right, and I'm going to start with the golf committee, and that would be John Craig. Yeah, there we are. Hello, Mr. Craig.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I think this is in lieu of me checking the I am a robot box. Been doing this for, I don't know, 20-some years now. And it's an obligation that we all make, is to show up in front of the commission at the city council's chambers. So plan on being a representative for the Paisanos, and I've been the vice president of the board of the advisory board and the Players Improvement Fund. I initiated that. I was the president when that thing started in 13, I believe it was, fiscal year 14. And that's come to fruition, and now we're kind of a combined part of the advisory board, and we're not our own committee anymore. But I look forward to serving on the board and ask for your blessings. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. And one of the nice things about making you come up here every couple of years is that we get to say thank you to you for helping with such a successful golf course. All right, and that takes us to the Street Tree Advisory Committee. We have 2 candidates for community at large. First one is Anthony DeMola. Come on up.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Tony DeMola. Thank you for seeing me. I am a board-certified master arborist. I've had that credential for 25 years, and I have been in the industry since 1980. I've been a volunteer on the STAC committee for 4 years now. I've had the pleasure of working with them. I believe that my experience and knowledge lends to the committee and helps them out. I hope so anyway. And I'm asking for the opportunity to do this again for another 2 years.
All right, thank you. Any
Any
comments, questions? Yep.
No, just
Vice Chair.
thank you for your service. You are a remarkable font of knowledge.
Thank you.
Every month, it's staggering. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And second on, we got Santos Escobar. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair McGill and Commissioners. My name is Santos Escobar. I was the Parks Manager for several years. I retired after a 25-year stint with the Parks and Recreation Department. I have over 45 years of knowledge in the industry. I've been on the STAC committee for 4 years now, and I'd like to serve another 2 and assist our city in providing my knowledge to our street tree committee. And I've enjoyed it so far, so I'd appreciate a vote of yes in approval, and we'll continue moving forward in a positive light.
All right, thank you. And we got Vice Chair Clark.
Thank you for not truly retiring. Your city still needs you.
Commissioner Aldana.
Yeah, and thank you for your service also.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's great to have that connection between the committees and the commission and your history with the Parks Department.
No, well, thank you. And I just also want to reiterate, too, that I am a native of Santa Barbara, so I know all the streets and such, and I know a lot of trees in the city.
Well,
So
there are a
thank
lot
you
of
so
trees
much.
to know.
All right.
Yeah. All right, and then that takes us to the Arts and Craft Show Advisory Committee. We have one candidate for the member at large, and that is Lisa Green. Do we have Lisa Green here? I don't.
Chair McGill, I don't believe so.
Okay. In that case, we will not do that one. What I would like to do is make a motion to accept the applications for the Golf Advisory Committee, John Craig, and the Street Tree Advisory Committee, Anthony DeMola and Santos Escobar, and then defer the Arts and Craft Committee. So I move that we, for the 3, John Craig, Anthony DeMola, and Santos Escobar.
Second.
All right? Well, thank you. And shall we go to a vote? Oh, sorry, if there's any discussion. No, I think we could go to a vote. Great, thank you very much. All right, now we're going to go to one for each. Okay. All right. We are starting with, Milpas, aren't we? And
So I will excuse myself.
we have one recusal.
Yes.
You have a second recusal?
Pardon? Okay. Okay. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair McGill and Commissioners. The first Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is a request to remove 13 trees located within the 0 to 900 blocks of North Milpas Street. It's a total of 8 Indian laurel figs, 4 New Zealand Christmas trees, and 1 Brisbane box. The applicant in this case is the Public Works Department. This is part of a much larger project known as the Milpas Street Crosswalk Safety and Sidewalk Widening Project, consistent with other city projects. We've invited Public Works staff here. They'll be doing a presentation to provide a brief overview of the entire project, and then we'll come back and look at the Street Tree Advisory Committee's review of the proposed removals. And today we have Michelle Bedard, who's a project planner on the project with Public Works, here to provide the project overview.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Slack, and thank you, commissioners, for hearing our project today. Again, my name is Michelle Bedard, project planner with the Public Works Department. So we're going to go ahead briefly and discuss the review of the project scope and go over the tree removal request and feedback requested on the curb realignments, tree preservation, and new tree plantings. So just a brief overview, the project corridor. The north end is at Canon Perdido Street, along to the south end at Quinientos Street, and you'll see the roundabout is circled there. There are some minor improvements within the roundabout. So this project is, there's two sort of parallel projects. One's the grant-funded project. That's the, focuses on intersection safety, and on this slide you can see intersection in the visual image below is the red highlighted areas with the stars. Those are the intersections that we're focusing on this portion of the project, which really just include major, safety enhancements. We're looking at intersection safety, minor sidewalk widening, intersection lightening, and improving flashers at Ortega Street. And then also one project update more recently is Yananali Street. Does have an existing, what we call rectangular rapid flashing beacons that was proposed to be updated to a mast arm beacon, but we, in consultation with the city traffic engineer, that will be a new traffic signal instead of a beacon. And then the streets maintenance portion of the project, again highlighting on the whole project as a corridor. That project will focus on the mid-block between the intersections, really looking at accessibility improvements, better quality pavement markings, high visibility ladder style crosswalks, mid-block sidewalk repair, again, somewhere the existing trees are to make some accessibility improvements, and repaving. So this is just a sort of an overview highlight of the project area. This starts at our northern boundary along the intersection of Canon Perdido Street, De La Guerra Street. You'll see at the Canon Perdido Street intersection, those are existing curb extensions. So we're really just doing some high visibility crosswalks in that intersection. The project also includes some improved vehicle stripe markings within the street. You'll also see some green pavement signaling the bicycle route across the street. And then also we're adding 3-foot bike barriers between the existing bike lanes between Canon Perdido Street and Coda Street. That's sort of a focus between the the high school north of Canon Perdido Street, and then also the junior high along Coda Street. Next slide, just visual examples again. You'll see in the north end, that's Ortega Street. That intersection has an existing median refuge island in the intersection on the north end of the intersection. What this project will do, will add a new median refuge island at the southern portion of that section with the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. Those are the pedestrian activated rapid flashing beacons. This is a non-signalized intersection. And you'll see again the bike buffers within the existing bike lane. And then on the Coda Street, you'll see the green stripe, conflict striping for the bike lanes in the intersection. Again, high visibility crosswalks. One of the things I didn't mention yet, but also at each intersection, we're going to be doing improved street lighting enhancements, improving street lighting at the intersections. I'll go to the next slide. And so this is just some visual representations, some before and after. This is an example of intersection at Coda Street looking east. And so you can get an idea of what the image on the right shows the new street light fixtures, the widened sidewalks, the conflict striping in the intersection. Again, moving along the street frontage, Coda Street to Haley. Again, this is the green striping for the bike lanes, new street lighting in the intersection. These green stripings also add access to crosstown bike connections and to the east side connections, and again, safe routes to school, to the junior high. Next slide. And again, just a visual from Haley Street to Gutierrez Street, again, noticing the areas of the curb extensions within at the intersections, widened sidewalks. Again, one of the important considerations for that is that reduces the amount of physical space within the intersection for pedestrians to cross the street. So pushing those curb extensions out also gives greater sight visibility for both the pedestrians and drivers likewise, so they can see each other as they're approaching the intersection, crossing the intersection. Again, just a before and after visualization of Haley Street. You can again see on the image on the right the widened sidewalks at the intersection, new street lights, the pavement conflict marking for the bike lanes, and Gutierrez Street to Montecito Street. Again, similar improvements with the high visibility crosswalk, the street lights, new street lights, and widened curb extensions at the intersection. And again, just Montecito to Yananali Street. Yananali Street, again, that's the one in the south of this image here. This will be a new street light, traffic signal at this intersection. And Yananali, so again, this is an image from the presentation from our November meeting, but this is, in the image on the right, you'll see that was essentially the mast arm rapid flashing beacon, but that will now be a traffic signal. Again, before and after, so Yananali Street with Milpas being the major street, cross street here, this is looking west, before and after. Next. Another view of Yananali Street. Yananali Street to Mason, again, similar improvements, widened sidewalks, curb extensions at the intersection, street lighting. Next. And Mason to Quinientos is the southern end of the project here at Quinientos Street. Next. So some just, again, visualizations of Mason Street. This is, that's okay. Mason Street looking north. Next. Mason Street looking southwest. So to get into the bullets of what we're here for today, we wanted to discuss the process for the tree analysis, the criterion for the tree removals and timing of tree removals, the tree planting opportunities, and future sidewalk and tree maintenance on Milpas Street. And this process, oh yes, next slide. The process was, we thought very methodically about this process. It is very important that everybody enjoy these street trees. We want to maintain a beautiful aesthetics along Milpas Street. It's a very important visual corridor, very high traffic volume corridor. So we had, we worked citywide, kind of as one city approach, and then also we hired consultant arborist, a consultant certified access specialist, and then our city traffic engineer to come up with the three components for how to maintain the minimum accessibility requirements, and reduce the number of overall trees to be removed. So the criterion for the tree removals for accessibility is a minimum 36-inch sidewalk width. That's sidewalk width on the ground. We have some visual images of what that looks like in the next few slides, as well as a minimum 36-inch width measured at 80 inches in height. So that's the vertical clearance, 36 inches in width at 80 inches in height. And then our city traffic engineering evaluated for sightline obstructions. We also have some examples of that, but essentially, again, approaching intersections, making sure that there's full sightline visibility for both vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians approaching intersections. And then another component was within the project, intersection improvements. So those were within the corners of areas where we're proposing curb extensions. Next slide. So this gets into more of the detail of the accessibility requirements. And this image shows the 36-inch minimum width on the ground measured on the sidewalk. And then again, just visually carry that 36 minimum width up to the 80 inches measured in vertical clearance and height. And so what you can see on the image on the right of the tree is that tree right there at 29 North Milpas Street, where one of the trunks does not meet that minimum 80-inch vertical clearance. So that's one of the trees that's proposed to be removed for accessibility, not meeting the vertical 80-inch clearance height. So intersection sightline approaches, this is sort of an example. This is 134 North Milpas, that image on the left. That's one of the trees that's proposed to be removed. These are trees that have been identified by our city traffic engineer that involve sightline visibility issues. And so the image on the right is really, if you look at the image on the left, the minor street in this case would be Mason Street. And if you're approaching Milpas being the major street, you want to make sure you have that visual clearance. That's that gray the gray triangle is that area representing the minimum visual clearance. So that tree that's imaged on the left falls within that area. And so again, just part of the project is making sure we can maintain visual safe sight lines for all vehicle and road users, whether you choose to drive a car or walk or you ride your bike. So just in summary, there's the project evaluated 95 trees within the project corridor. 82 are proposed to remain. 13 are proposed to be removed. 8 of the trees are proposed to be removed for safety and accessibility issues. And then 5 trees are proposed to be removed within the intersection improvements. And then we also evaluated, we walked the corridor with park staff and looked at and our project team and looked at locations where we could add additional trees. We found currently there's 36 tree locations that we've evaluated, and those will be pending. There's a few that still need to do some holing to make sure that there's no conflicts with utility conflicts. So those numbers of trees will still be evaluated. Next slide here is the sidewalk width obstruction. So these are just visual examples of the 2 trees that don't meet the current minimum 36 inches in width on the ground. So those are the 2 trees proposed to be removed in that safety element, not meeting minimum 36 inches on the ground. These are 3 trees proposed to be removed, not meeting the minimum 80-inch vertical clearance height for accessibility. Next. And these are 3 trees proposed to be removed for visual sightline obstructions. And the next couple slides are the 5 trees proposed to be removed that are located within the intersection improvements. And again, this gives us the opportunity also to more strategically place the new trees and spacing to best accommodate future growth of trees and although other site improvements that are proposed. So again, these are additional 2 proposed to be removed within the intersection improvements. So this graphic just really is an overview of the proposed tree removals, the 13 proposed trees. The trees in gray are the ones that we just most recently looked at that are proposed to be removed because they fall within the existing location for the proposed curb extensions and intersection enhancements. And then the others are the existing fig trees proposed to be removed, and they're color-coded. The blue are the vertical obstructions, the kind of goldish yellow color are the sightline obstruction, and the more orange is the sidewalk width obstruction. And again, just to sort of, there's 95 existing trees within the project corridor, 82 are proposed to remain, 13 proposed to be removed, 8 again for safety and accessibility issues, and then 37 opportunities for new tree planting opportunities. As again discussed, here's the locations, potential locations identified with the project team and park staff. This slide kind of gives an overall of all of those 3 categories. The existing trees to remain in green, the grade trees are proposed to be removed, and then the blue dots represent locations of new trees. And again, so this really just illustrating that over time, Milpas Street will still retain a very good overall tree canopy coverage. And final slide, I believe, this is just the proposed tree removal table. So you can see the proposed locations and the reason for removal and the tree species. So that's all I have for you today, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Slack, do you have anything that you're going to add to it, or should we just go to questions now?
Chair McGill, Commissioners, we'll talk about the Street Tree Advisory Committee's comments and review as well. I think if there's maybe brief questions from the commission, but we do want to stay within the focus of the application for the tree removals and not get into, you know, the weeds on lights and striping and things like that.
That does, when we do get to questions, that is one, it's, with these public works presentations, it's very tempting to start asking about sidewalks and streetlights, but we're all about trees. So I think unless somebody has a specific question of clarity about what part of the presentation meant, I would say just continue on with the street tree recommendation, and then we'll take the questions all at once.
So Chair McGill, Commissioners, the Street Tree Advisory Committee heard essentially the exact same presentation. Also, we viewed the trees. I think generally the consensus from the group, there was quite a bit of discussion. Some of that revolved around replanting strategies and the flavor of tree, which we'll talk about shortly as well. But I think, in short, most of them, the rationale was pretty sound and practical. It was hard, I think, from the committee's perspective to find fault with sightline issues or accessibility-related issues. When you look at the ficus trees, which we saw from the presentation, the other 5 trees proposed for removal, you know, are very small in stature compared to the large mature ficus that are being proposed for removal. But again, I think there was relatively quick consensus from the committee that the removals proposed were practical. And then just to kind of expand on the additional 5 trees, there was support also for those 5 trees removed, and a lot of that was driven by the opportunity to plant new trees in these curb extensions, and it wasn't really represented in sort of a conceptual slides, but there presents a really great opportunity to make a much wider planting space. So we get a lot more rooting volume, much bigger space to just grow a bigger tree, you know, so we can kind of restore some of the potential lost canopy. And then it does add like a really great sort of narrowing element. You know, Ms. Bedard talked about the shrinking of the street, and the trees, when you put them out into the road, play a pretty critical role in just sort of like that visual component and traffic calming as well. So it makes just a lot of practical sense. And after quite a long discussion, there was consensus to support the removals as proposed, you know, with the expectation that staff would continue to work with Public Works on figuring out the replacement trees and locations. And not to get into great deals with that, there's several existing vacant sites that we'll take advantage of. I think we'll continue to push the boundaries and look for opportunities to cut new tree wells. And then there will be new planting opportunities within these curb extensions that happen as part of the infrastructure intersection improvement project.
Okay, thank you very much. So the way this process is going to work is that I will now open it up for, I guess all the new committee members are here. I'll open it up for questions, and questions for any of the staff members that have been presented, and then we will open it up to public comment, and then we'll have a discussion and a vote. So I'm going to start with Commissioner Ramsey.
Hi, thank you so much for your work. Looking at the new plant opportunities, you say there are 30 potential. How many do we expect of those to come to fruition?
And Chair McGill, Commissioner Ramsey, I think the bar was set at 37. A lot of those are existing vacancies, and then some will be created as part of these intersection improvements. So I think the number is going to be very close to that. You know, it's kind of like in the concept level, and then you get on the ground, you do run into things. And then, you know, I think the one thing that we've seen consistently is Public Works' commitment to creating new tree wells. And so as we continue to get opportunities, I think the number, it actually may be higher, or it should be very close to that.
I really love to hear that. Thank you so much for your hard work. Last question. Milpas is a visually important corridor, like you mentioned, and those ficus are just really stunning when you walk down. How many years, decades do you think it'll take for these new trees to come in and really just kind of fill in the space that we'll be missing?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Ramsey, I think when we look at the designation change that's being recommended by the committee just shortly after this item, I think we'll be recommending species that grow pretty quickly and can perform pretty well in, a pretty difficult environment. I think it would be, kind of silly to say that it would ever replace, the uniqueness that is milpas and the ficus trees there. But, I think in particular, we're proposing the use of a tree that can, get decent size pretty quick. But, like trees are a generational, investment too. So to say that, in 10 years you got big trees is pretty foolish, I think. So, we're talking multi-decades of growth before we have big trees back on the street.
Great, thank you so much. Yes.
Sorry, thank you, Commissioners. Just wanted to add real briefly, I don't think I said it in my presentation, but we do want to try to start planting trees as early as possible, even prior to the start of the project construction, which is anticipated in 2027.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Price and then Vice Chair Clark.
So first of all, thank you very much for all the hard work you've put in. This is a very impressive presentation. I would like to know, of any of the trees that are slated for removal, how many of them will be relocated, if any?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Price, relocation of a tree of that size is next to impossible. You would have to basically demo everything around it to preserve like the amount of roots that you would need to be able to move it. So it's probably not possible. Almost everything's possible, but I would say this might not even be possible without yeah, it's almost not possible to relocate a tree of that size.
Vice Chair Clark.
So my question is, looking forward, does Public Works anticipate any future improvements in the next couple of decades that would take the number of 8 Indian laurel figs to more than 8?
So, Chair McGill and Commissioner Clark, we've struck a really great balance, and if you were able to do site visits, you saw a bunch of asphalt. So asphalt is now like the new sidewalk medium out there, sort of like in perpetuity, and that creates like basically a transitional plan for retention of the ficus trees in the short, medium, even long term. So there's, our department's going to fight really hard to not put concrete back because that really leads to quick loss of trees. So I think we're seeing a real shift in how we approach the strategy out there. So I think, there's repaving of the road and there's going to be some work, but asphalt around the trees in terms of where the sidewalk is going to allow us to retain the ficus trees until, say, like natural causes, or disease or death or something like that. So I think it's our hope to retain as many as possible, keep maintaining them. We have crews out there right now doing just routine maintenance on them. So those are some of our strategies, and Public Works has been really receptive to that because 36 inches is way less than the kind of sidewalk that they want these days. Like 48 sort of bare minimum. So we've created a really, I think, proactive transitional strategy to keep as many as we can on street. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, the 36 seemed narrow to me. I was surprised at that. Okay.
I had one more comment. I was thinking maybe we should designate some of the ficus as historic specimens.
Let's move on. All right. I have a question, and it kind of leads into what might ultimately be a motion, and then I'm going to turn it over to public comment. So it really comes down to, I was looking at the various pieces of paper with recommendations on it, and the street tree recommendation specifically says the committee also discussed the proposed replacement trees, commenting that 37 and it says the commission approved the proposal for the 13 removals and the 37 replacement trees. So that reads like it's a conditional recommendation. The orange agenda just has it as an approve, and the text talks about 37 potential sites. So we'll get to this when we get to the motion. I'm kind of a little bit reluctant to do a blanket approval with no conditional replacement. So my question is, what is a number that you would be comfortable with as a condition for replacement?
Chair McGill, Commissioners, I think I think when we reviewed at the committee level, the number, I think during review at least, was assumed to be more like static. So, the potential infrastructure conflicts, we didn't really discuss the possibility of that replanting number reducing too much, based on like my poor memory and the meeting being a few months ago. I think you have a pretty strong commitment from Parks and Recreation Department and Public Works to put as many trees back as possible. It certainly would hit well north of 30, but if you need a specific number, you could say 30 or more, something like that.
Okay.
And I feel really comfortable about that.
The recommendation says 37, but the text says potential, and so I'm just looking at the inconsistencies in the text and really wanting to flesh out what you really meant versus what the recommendation was. Yeah. Okay. With that, I think I'm going to turn it over to public comment. So I have 3 speaker slips. My intent is to go in the order that I got them. And so when I call your name, you come up there and you will have 2 minutes. And the first person that I have is Andrew Kendrick. Welcome, Mr. Kendrick.
Thank you very much. Andrew Kendrick, I'm a local businessman, have a consulting firm here in Santa Barbara. I live on 500, so it's very near and dear to me. And I am a hydrogeologist and geochemist and biologist, so I'm very aware of the trees and the beautiful issues we have here in Santa Barbara and hope to keep them. I want to read just a little piece. I know I only have 2 minutes and I'm watching the clock from Parks and Recreation's Trees and Urban Forestry Program. You probably are all very aware of this because this is your document, but I'm not sure everyone here is. Urban Forestry Vision. Santa Barbara's urban forest is healthy, diverse, and contributes to the community's economic, environmental, and aesthetic vitality. It is valued and cared for by the city and its citizens and reflect our horticultural heritage. And the mission, the urban forestry mission, preserve, protect, and enhance our trees. Promote the benefits of trees and foster a healthy and diverse urban forest. There's lots of stuff that I'm not going to read, keeping my time. There's also the 68-page urban forest management plan, 68 pages that this group has developed. And it talks about the environmental, economic, social benefits of the trees, energy conservation, pollution, stormwater protection, carbon dioxide reduction, air quality improvement, social health, aesthetics. And the U.S. Forestry Service has developed tools to measure the benefits. Santa Barbara's urban forest has the potential to provide the community with $29 million in benefits annually. So what I would hate to see is us lose $29 million in benefit to save construction costs, things like that. So what I'm urging the commission to do is consider the process. I think it's a great idea, and some of these things are critical. The sidewalk width, it has to be there. If you're in a wheelchair, it's got to be there.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure all of those trees need to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
I think you've summed up in a nutshell the balancing act that gets walked with trees in our beautiful city. And the next person we have is Carla Lejade. Did I get that right? Lejade, sorry, thank you. And you will have 2 minutes.
I didn't really prepare anything. I just came because I moved here 10 years ago and I love trees, and I saw that we were going to cut down some of the trees on Milpas in the paper this morning. And I felt it was a travesty because I'm a docent at Lotus Land. I love trees. I love nature. I moved to Santa Barbara from LA because of that Rambla as you come down Milpas. It's so beautiful, those old 70-year-old trees that shade it, and we need those because it's getting hotter. And I just think, I mean, that's a fabulous presentation. We need safety. I don't disagree with that. But I think there are other solutions where we could save those trees, where we could big sidewalks around it. We could maybe have Milpas be a 2-lane street, and it could be more of a Rambla. It's got Spanish heritage. there's such an opportunity to look at it more creatively and save the trees. And I just would like you to maybe give us a little more time to think about it before we cut down some of our heritage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. I think I've got this right, because it's Christine, that I got. Is it Newhouser? Oh, fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you. I also live off of Milpas Street, and those trees are just iconic. You know, when the buildings start to go to, you know, over 2 feet high, 2 stories high, you realize, God, what a beautiful town. It's, you know, 1 and 2 story, and these trees are just beautiful. In fact, Huell Hauser had an episode on trees somewhere in Los Angeles. I couldn't figure out where it was, but they were the ficus trees, and they were showing the downtown like that. I think it's a travesty, too. The ficus trees are so incredible. Most of the other trees are pretty inconsequential, except for that coral trees on Milpas Street. But maybe if you could take just 1 off of each block, so there'd be only 5. If you could take 3 less of the ficus trees, because those are the ones that are really so important. And that's just, it's so stunning. And they're a habitat for birds. They provide the shade. And just, it's an incredible look for Santa Barbara. So also, the transportation, you can't make Milpas any less than it is, because the traffic already has gotten so bad with the lane dieting. Last week, I've been sitting through one light, 1 block. So anyway, I just think that you should keep as many trees as you can, especially the ficus, because those are really the ones that are so iconic. And yeah, you can't move an old tree like that. It'll die. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we actually had a written comment about moving the trees, so I'm glad that's come up for the record. And then the last public comment.
Can I just say the evacuation plan, all the road closures, I know I'm getting in the weeds, I'm not.
So, yeah, sorry, I need to move on. Okay, thank you. And then the final speaker we have is Clay, I believe it is, Shank.
Hi, everybody. Commissioners, thank you for hosting us, giving us this opportunity. I saw the notice tacked on the tree recently. It was on 1 tree. I actually am just learning about this and am here with my short amount of time to say I think I speak for a huge portion of the public that absolutely doesn't want to see any of these trees removed, and certainly could consider sightline obstructions as something that could be handled with a warning sign, approach slowly. I think that maybe human beings can sacrifice a little bit in this case, maybe consider that this is a beautiful city and geez, we love these trees, and I think every one of these is historic. And if we don't decide to protect them, then every one of them is going to get so big that we lose them all. And I don't think it's worth it. I go back and forth from here to South Dakota through the year. And on return this year, it's kind of been a question of, hey, where are the trees going? We have really lost a lot of trees here. And I believe there are definitely creative solutions that we could reach that don't just involve more concrete and wider roads. With all due respect to the needs of wheelchairs, I think sitting through traffic maybe is a sacrifice that people are willing to make if there's less room for cars or even less room for bike, considering that we have side streets that are really well established off of Milpas for bike riding. I think people don't know about this, I don't think people really know about what happened on Anapamu, and I think that people are going to be very sad to see anything happen to any of these trees, and you should protect them all.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm sorry, we need to move on. I'm sorry, we need to move on. I'm sorry. No, well, with it, we need to move through our process here. Do we have anybody? Keep
those trees, stop driving around so much. It's no wonder it doesn't rain.
Okay, could we please, do we have anybody online?
Anyone who would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand in the Zoom control panel. There's no hands raised.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, I would like to, I think we're going to move on.
just read them, if you don't want me to speak.
All right, we'll just do one more public comment. This is the closing of public comment. Okay, thank you. And we have Lisa Rudolph.
So I just wrote down some questions about the trees. Yeah, it's upsetting to see these go, but I understand the project that you're proposing. But I was wondering, one, is it possible to trim the ficus trees, the trunks, because there's multiple trunks coming out? Can that be done in order to save the trees? Second, can the small trees be saved? I saw several pictures of really small ones. Can those be saved? And then the third thing is, when you plant new trees, with the drought that we have, how successful will the new trees be in growing in this climate change situation? That's
Okay,
all. Thank you.
Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is to bring it back. I will take, for questions and comments, but I'll pick up the questions that just got raised and bring them up here. And actually, a couple of them questions that I had too, so it's pretty. So the three questions that I had that I think kind of pick up on comments and I think would be good to hear some feedback from you is, and I did notice that I was looking at the lead lines on those ones that are being pruned, that are being slated for removal from the 80-inch vertical clearance, and I was wondering, could you comment on the possibility, I'll give you all of them and you can do them in the order you want. Could you comment on the possibility of selective lead pruning to achieve the 80-inch clearance? And then specific to the, and it's probably worth commenting on actually rerouting of sidewalks around the ficus. And then also on the, with respect to the ficus and the sightline triangles, could you comment on the possible alternatives to removing ficus for sightline? I think those are the three main questions that I've heard coming up and that are consistent with some of my questions as well.
So, Chair McGill, Commissioners, in terms of the height obstructions, we were on site multiple times, and unfortunately, the ficus tree would give you, it's so flexible. You can do so much to it, but in each of those vertical obstruction situations, there wasn't just like a single stem that we could have removed. So you would have been just having to cut huge amounts of trunk out, and it would have led to like just structural stability issues. So that was evaluated like in great detail. I tried really hard to make that work, and it just simply doesn't work from a practical sense. I think in terms of like things like property acquisition, because the right-of-way stops where the back of the sidewalk is, so you have significant constraints. So that thing, and also sightline, I'll defer to Public Works on.
Thank you, Commissioner, Chair McGill. Regarding whether or not there's a workaround on the sightline trees, our city traffic engineer worked very closely on those. Again, as we mentioned before, we also don't enjoy removing any of these existing mature trees, and we were really cautious to propose removal for only the most extreme trees that need to be removed for safety and accessibility issues. I don't think signage is a matter. In fact, I think adding signage just adds visual conflicts, doesn't decrease. And then regarding, I think there was one question regarding kind of going or expanding the sidewalk. The road is, a very well-traveled road. It has greater than 20,000 vehicles every single day. It has been approached to the traffic engineer before about reducing the street to one vehicle lane in each direction, and it just can't accommodate that with the traffic volume on the existing street. And that too, as Mr. Slack mentioned, going into any other options would probably involve getting property acquisitions, which is very expensive. We already are working on very limited grant funding to do this project alone. So I don't see any additional avenues to save those existing trees that were mentioned, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you very much. And I guess before I open for kind of discussion, motion, wherever we're going, I guess I just want to make one comment about the Urban Forestry Department. I've been on this commission, I don't know, going on 8 years now. And the one thing I do know about the entire team, including and especially the Street Tree Advisory Committee, but certainly the Urban Forestry team, is the one thing this group does not want to do is go around and cut down mature, healthy trees. I mean, I've never seen people work harder to save an urban forest and bring the breadth of knowledge and understanding as to the diversity of the urban forests that we've got. So when there's a recommendation to cut down a tree, I know whether or not at the end of the day we agree with it, I know it has not been made lightly. I just want to make sure that's out there. And with that, I will open it up for discussion or a motion. Commissioner Price.
Thank you very much. I had two questions. First of all, one of our speakers asked if there's anything we can do to possibly relocate or save the smaller trees.
Chair McGill, Commissioner Price, there's a possibility for retention, but I think I had spoken earlier. I think while, speaking to Chair McGill's comments, we take tree removal very seriously. The small stature of these trees and the possibility for the potential for, getting 3 times the space to grow a large tree and put it in a good spot made enough sense to support the proposal to remove the additional 5 trees. So we're not losing, in the case of the ficus, you're talking about 70 years of just monumental growth and establishment, whereas here we're talking about, much shorter period of time and the opportunity to grow a much larger tree. Of those trees, they're already in small spots and they're underperforming, and most of them are kind of like small to medium-sized trees anyway. So, and what you'll see when we look at the designation changes, we're proposing to plant something that can get much more canopy. So that's the rationale behind it, and that was the consensus from the committee and the recommendation.
Thank you. My second question is actually related to the designation change, which please let me know if I'm off base here. I didn't see the ficus specifically in that designation change. Am I missing something, or is that
We're actually going to get to it. But
Chair McGill and Commissioner Price, we take that as a separate
we'll
item.
take that as a separate item.
Yeah, once we get through this item.
Okay, Vice Chair Clark.
One of the public comment persons asked how replanting new trees in a drought would go, and that made me wonder if, since you're going to get grant funding for the project, will part of that grant funding go towards the watering and the upkeep of the new trees while they're still young, or will that be solely the Parks Department responsibility?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Clark, Public Works is committed to paying for the trees, the installation, and I think 2 years of watering. So the initial establishment, consistent with other things that we've seen, has been committed to from the department.
All right. Recognizing that this is one of these painful things that we have comes across our table so often, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion. Because I think we understand the sides of the issue here, and we've got really important safety issues to address, and we've got beautiful trees, and we have the opportunity to create space for more beautiful trees for the next generations. So I am going to go ahead and make a motion to approve the street tree removal request on Milpas of the 8 ficus, 4 New Zealand Christmas trees, and the Brisbane boxed, and did I miss anything? No. And on the condition that as part of the project, at least 30 new trees are planted.
Second.
Okay, all right. So we have a motion, and do we have any discussion before we go to a vote?
Yeah, I would just like to say, when I started trying to educate myself about this project, I did not want a single one of these trees cut down. I felt very strongly about it. I was prepared to make a fuss, and you know, I stomped on over to Milpas and spent a couple hours there going up and down the street. And I was just kind of watching one of the sightline trees, and I saw a gentleman in crutches and a walking cast go up to the corner and then disappear. I could not see him at all. And a car came whipping around the corner and almost hit him. And at that point, I just realized that as much as our urban forest is so important to our survival as a species, to our city, to our community, people are important too. And this is not putting fish before people or people before fish. This is just about keeping the people we live with safe. And at the same time, striking a balance and, you know, regenerating our forests with trees that have a future. That's it.
Okay, thank you. If we have no additional comment, I would like to bring it to a vote. And where is my, are we there? Did somebody not lock? Oh, did everybody lock? Who are we missing? Okay. Oh, she's having trouble recusing.
Chair McGill and commissioners, you could do a voice vote if you choose.
Okay, we'll just do a voice vote. Okay, we'll start
Just roll
to
call.
the right, Commissioner Ramsey.
I vote yea.
Lesnar Buxton.
Aye.
Clark. McGill, aye. All right, so we have a unanimous vote in favor with all the sadness. And I'm going to read the appeal. I'm going to read the appeal language. And it says, any action of the Parks and Recreation Commission made pursuant to Santa Barbara Municipal Code, Chapter 1520, Tree Planting and Maintenance, 1524, Preservation of Trees, may be appealed to the City Council within 10 days pursuant to provisions of 13050 of the Municipal Code, and all the numbers notwithstanding, that basically means that anybody who disagrees with this opinion has the right to appeal it to City Council, who is the final decider on the matter, but you need to do so within 10 days. Okay, thank you very much. All right, and thank you very much. Shall we take the Milpas street tree designation, and then we'll bring Sebastian back?
Chair McGill, both commissioners.
Yes, right. Sorry, I'll get there. Thanks.
And Chair McGill and Commissioners, the next item that we'll be reviewing from the Street Tree Advisory Committee is the recommendation to change the street tree designation. This is for the 0 to 1100 blocks of North Milpas Street. So when we kind of think about the street, we're talking basically at the roundabout down at Carpinteria all the way to where the road terminates or changes into East Anapamu up by the Santa Barbara Bowl. So as part of this project, we're expecting to see this application and knowing, you know, that this has kind of been in the works for a couple years. It was, in talking about replacement trees, it was important to kind of take another look at the street tree designations, knowing that we were going to get a little larger planting space, and then also kind of be cognizant of, you know, the climate change and the water challenges, and choose things that are going to be like sustainable selections moving forward. So I think just to kind of dive into the ficus question from Commissioner Price, I think while the department, it's also one of my favorite trees personally and professionally, but professionally it is a very challenging tree, and it's very oversized for the tree well location. And despite its unbelievable performance, it is really challenging in those small 3x3 tree wells. And so I think the department and specifically the forestry program has the commitment to try to preserve and retain as many of these that we have in the community. The continued use of them in these small spaces doesn't make practical sense. And I think that's an opinion shared by the Street Tree Advisory Committee as well. So in terms of selecting new species, the challenge was finding, you know, things that sort of strike a balance between performing well in a dense urban area with very specific constraints. There's a lot of zero setbacks there, so you have back a sidewalk, then you've got, as one commenter said, 2-story or more buildings. So it was about finding trees that performed well in small spaces, and then also finding or selecting new species that could perform well in these larger spaces. And so we have 2 slides because it was just too busy to fit them all on there. But after a pretty extensive review and discussion, the Street Tree Advisory Committee made a recommendation to change the designation, which originally was a prickly melaleuca and fern pine, and that was split up and also referenced in the commission report. But they made a recommendation to change the designation to the water gum, the Sydney red gum, which is it's technically a eucalyptus species, but a very well-behaved different one. This tree can get to pretty good size. It's a fast grower, so this is one of those species that we've selected for these curb extensions to try to really fill in the space, especially in these intersections, which is pretty much already devoid of canopy in a lot of cases. And then in addition to that, the New Zealand Christmas tree, which is a smaller tree, but it's a performer. If you were able to walk Milpas, there's actually quite a few of them. Despite it not being designated, it historically has been planted and shown success. And then actually as you go towards the Santa Barbara Bowl, the African fern pine also exists, and it's a tree that can get to a pretty decent size and is very urban tolerant. So after review and discussion, the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommended changing the designation for the 0 to 1100 blocks of North Milpas Street to the African fern pine, the New Zealand Christmas tree, the Sydney red gum, and the water gum.
Okay. Any questions? I don't have any. All right. And we have no comment slips here. Do we have anybody online?
Anyone who would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand in the Zoom control panel. There are no hands raised.
All right. With that, I'm prepared to a motion, if there's no discussion. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation to make a designation change for the 0 to 1100 blocks of Milpas to be the water gum, Sydney red gum, New Zealand Christmas tree, and African fern pine.
I'll second. All right, unless there's any discussion, I will bring it to a vote. Shall I just do a voice vote? All right, we're going to do a voice vote. I'll start this way. Vice Chair Clark. Commissioner Price.
Aye.
Commissioner Lesnar Buxton. Aye. Commissioner Ramsey. Aye. Commissioner McGill. Aye. All right. And now we can go get our commissioners and go to, shall we, what's first, Del Monte or Sherman? Yeah, that's what I thought. Back, thank you.
Chair McGill, Commissioners, the next Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is a request to remove a total of 5 trees located within the front setback of the property at 330 Sherman Road. The applicant's requesting the removal of 1 London plane tree, 3 coast live oak, and 1 blue gum eucalyptus. The rationale for removal is just comprehensive redevelopment of property. If you were able to make a site visit, this is a vacant lot. The previous structure was lost during the Tea Fire. The owner is hoping to redevelop the property, and the application materials as well as the commission materials, there was a site plan that included a landscape plan kind of showing the improvements throughout the property. It's a pretty small, constrained site with a pretty steep slope, so the structure kind of takes up a lot of that space, and most of the trees are within the building footprint and, arguably or maybe not specimen trees. A lot of the oaks have probably been resprouted as a result of the fire damage. The committee reviewed the application looked at the landscape plan as well as the proposed replacement trees, which I believe it was 6 native coast live oaks planted throughout the property, some within the front setback. The committee concluded that the removals constituted a reasonable and practical development of the property, and that the replacements were more than adequate in terms of offsetting the loss of biomass on site, and made a recommendation to approve the removals on the condition that the applicant replace the trees as presented on the landscape plan that was submitted with the application, and recommended that the committee could use the finding that a reasonable and practical development of the property supports the removal of the proposed trees.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Slack? All right, I have no questions myself. I have no speaker slips. Do we have anybody online? Oh, sorry, we have a quick.
Just a question for my curiosity, because the writing was so tiny on the landscape plan. Did they say a minimum box size for the replacement trees?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Clark, I think we had that same conversation. I don't know the answer to that. I know the landscape architect, they tend to use smaller size trees, but I think that we're also in agreement that that makes good sense.
I was just curious, I couldn't read it.
Okay, do we have any speakers online?
Yes, I do see one hand raised online. Maddie Shelton, when I call on you, please unmute yourself, and then you may speak for a maximum of 2 minutes.
Hi there, this is Maddie Shelton from Jeff Shelton Architects Office. We are here to answer any questions the commission might have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. She asked about box. Yo.
Oh, I don't know if that was the architect. I
That's
don't
the
think they would have an
architect,
answer about the landscape
Yeah,
planners.
yeah. All right. If we have no questions, no discussion, I will take a motion. All right, I'll make a motion. I will move that we conditionally approve these following, the setback removal request at 330 Sherman Oaks on the condition that it is replanted per the landscape plan, and with the finding being that it's a reasonable and practical development.
I second your motion.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Nielsen. If we have no discussion, I will go to a vote. Okay, we are approved, and that takes us to El Monte Drive.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the next Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is a request to remove 2 Italian stone pines. These trees are located within the front setback of the property at 318 El Monte Drive. On the application, the applicant listed multiple reasons for removal, including concerns with failure, meaning like limb or tree failure, trees falling over, fire concerns, that was like debris and fire related, as well as concerns with damage to structures, both the property owner structure as well as the driveway and foundation to the neighboring home to the north of the property. The committee reviewed the trees. They reviewed the reasons stated on the application for removal. I think there was general consensus that the trees were in good health and had been well maintained on site. There was quite a bit of discussion and review about the realignment of the driveway. The home is going through remodel, if you're able to make a site visit, and the driveway used to enter the side of the garage, I guess, for lack of a better explanation, and now their realignment is taking the driveway straight in, so there's a lot of encroachment with the new driveway on the existing tree. As the applicant stated in their application, it was their intent to retain the trees, and then as the project kind of evolved and things changed, from their perspective, as well as consultation with a private arborist, they changed their decision to retain the trees and wanted to pursue removal. So they're currently in the construction phase and, you know, have since applied and are pursuing removal of the trees. The committee weren't thrilled with the driveway and tree proximity. It's doable. It's going to create some challenges, I think, for them. I think it's, you know, when you go through like the plan review process and you're looking at preserving everything, you know, sometimes like where that hardscape is in relation to the tree just might get overlooked. So the driveway is pretty close to the tree, and they'll probably have to do like some amount of root pruning in order to get the driveway in there. And so those were sort of like comments and statements made by the committee during the review. The tree to the south of the property doesn't really pose any of these structural conflicts. It's just really a tree of large size. You know, and looking at things like fire, which we've seen a lot of, and we're going to see a lot more of, as well as like debris and just general tree maintenance. Those typically aren't triggers for tree removal of a front setback tree, especially when a property is not within a high fire hazard zone. And after comprehensive review, the committee, there was consensus that they valued both trees and the contribution to the street enough that they made a recommendation to deny the application wholly for both the Italian stone pines in the front setback at 318 El Monte Drive.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to open it to questions from the commission members. To Mr. Slack. Commissioner Nielsen.
Can you summarize if there was any discussion about the replacement of, the proposed replacement of the? Thank you. Thank you. Can you summarize if there was any discussion about the proposed replacement of the trees and how that went in the committee meeting? Like what, the oaks and the olives?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Nielsen, that's a good question. And I neglected to mention that as part of the application, that the applicant did propose a replanting strategy of oak and olive. I think when the committee's reviewing these things, replacements usually are brought in after a determination is made on whether a tree sort of satisfies those requirements for removal. So there wasn't much discussion about replacements because I think there was pretty quickly the value in the existing trees was high enough that there would really, in the committee's view, replacements wouldn't offset the loss of these large mature trees on the property, if that makes sense. I think we always look at it as a group, and certainly the committee is cognizant of that, but I do think that if a tree or multiple trees on the property, from their perspective, doesn't have a lot of rationale for removal, that replacements aren't discussed like in great detail.
Commissioner Aldana.
Yeah, I'm just curious to know if the committee, the street tree committee, let's just say the house on the south of the, so basically to the right of the house as you're looking at it, the damage in the garage and also in the driveway, because they had roots, and then the house at the corner, I also noticed the driveway was uprooted about 3 inches or so, and then along with the patio. So basically, there's root damage on both sides. Just curious to know if the committee saw that.
Yeah, Chair McGill, Commissioner O'Donnell, they did. There's actually some damage visible out in the street too, in the curb and gutter.
Right.
And as part of the application materials, they provided really good photo exhibits too of each of the cracking of the cracking and raising of the hardscapes on both properties. So that was reviewed in detail on the site visits. I think again, knowing what we know, in terms of root pruning and the hardships that large trees can provide, it was just the committee's opinion that they warranted retention in this case.
Thank you.
I'm going to follow, I'm just going to pick up on that line of questioning. So the photos that we saw of the cracks in the neighbor's garage, so not the driveway, the garage, was the street tree committee aware of that, of those as well?
Chair McGill, Commissioners, those were part of the application materials, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We didn't go in the garage.
Yeah.
But I do think that the property owner's here too, so they could probably speak in more detail to the damage that exists within the garage.
Okay. I think I'm going to hold, I think I'm going to hold my more fundamental questions about this until after we hear from the owners and the public comment. Normally I would start with the in-house speakers and then go to Zoom, but my understanding is the applicant is on Zoom, or is the applicant in present?
Correct. Scott Detmer, the owner of the property, is on Zoom.
Okay, so what I'm going to, okay, so, okay, we'll go, and are you, normally,
I'm Sean Lynch.
Sean Lynch is
okay, so normally I go in order that I get them, but I'm going to start with you. So what I'm going to do is then, I am going to do the ones that we have in-house, and then I will go to Zoom, and I'm going to start with Mr. Lynch, since you, I take it, are representing the owners in this instance.
Yeah, they would like to speak, obviously.
Yeah, that's absolutely. All right, so, and then we did get a number of written comments, which you should all be aware of. All right, Mr. Lynch, you will have 2 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm just really here to field any questions you may have. As Nathan discussed, they've been great working with us and trying to figure out a solution, and obviously we are here where we are. So the existing driveway, as you can see right now, the curb cut's on the right-hand side. The driveway was pretty damaged from the tree. Unfortunately, both of those trees flank our property, so no matter where we put our driveway, it was damaged. And so even if we kept the driveway, the garage where it was, where you can see the plywood, there was going to be damage to a replaced driveway no matter what. We went straight in, that way we could remove all the hardscape within the front yard, so we made a better landscape condition. The driveway will be permeable, so whether that's permeable pavers or permeable concrete, so water will be able to infiltrate into that area. We will do, if that northern tree needs to be retained, we will do kind of a chicane through it, so we'll have a kind of try to go around the roots as much as possible, but really we just, after kind of reviewing the sites and being on property as much as we've been for the past year, these trees drop a lot of needles. Obviously with the fires, everybody's highly concerned with sort of high fire risk. These trees are obviously very flammable. Coming into a drought as well, that's going to create more issues. And as we all know, homeowner policies are getting dropped left and right. My parents just had theirs dropped, and they were over on Hope Ranch Annex, and it was because the insurance company thought they had discoloration on the roof. So they're dropping no matter any excuse they can find. And obviously this is a very big concern, and not only do we and the clients want to drop it, most of the neighbors here who have completely impacted from these trees to their property. So there is definitely a loss of value to these properties as they're having to replace driveways, foundations, everything. So thank you for your time. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay, great, thanks so much. All right, next we have Danny Siegel. And I think you know the drill by now.
Thank you, committee members. I live in the house, the 2-story house above the property. I want to voice my strong support of removing both trees. They've caused my family and us a lot of troubles. We've had to replace the sewer lateral line because of the tree roots. That's a $12,000 repair. The water line is now being threatened, my contractor tells me, or my plumber that did that repair. Our driveway is being pushed well over 4 inches above the surface of the garage from the roots. To prevent that, we dug a giant trench along the property line and cut all the roots, so the tree is structurally unsound according to my landscaper, so it's a safety issue. When we replace our driveway, that will only increase the problem with the safety. My house is uphill, so there's the uphill roots. If you know how gravity works, the uphill roots prevent the tree from falling downhill. So those roots have been cut to prevent additional damage. I have 2 daughters. When they walk out of the garage, they're 1-year-old and 3 years old. They're tripping over the increased sidewalk there. I think everyone forgot to mention the tree is under a high voltage power line. And so that's a huge fire issue. I pay a premium for my insurance because they come and bring an inspector out and they see the trees there with the power lines, so I have to pay a premium on insurance now. So even the insurance carrier is saying this is unsafe. So I think it's really just gross negligence at this point to not approve the removal. And additionally, the foundation of my garage is also starting to crack as a result of this, as well as the other neighbor. I'm sometimes called the mayor of the neighborhood because I'm always out with my dogs and kids, so I know pretty much everyone in the neighborhood. I have 19 families within one block that support the removal of these trees, so it's pretty unanimous. I don't think we get 19 families. A lot of them, I believe, sent you emails. I helped to make sure they got their voices out there. And so the current owners are very, very fabulous, and they're willing to replace the trees with better species. So I think it's a win-win for everyone.
Thank you very much. And yes, we did get a number of emails. And then the final in-house I've got is Duke McPherson. Come on up, Duke.
I'm Duke McPherson, a member of the Street Tree Advisory Committee. Nice to see the commission all filled out here. I think Mr. Slack covered the points that we had made in our vote to reject this application. These are two very valuable trees. Without them, it's going to look very, very stark, these two buildings. So let me take the issues one by one. Roots, you just have to be proactive. Come on, get out there and prune them before it happens, before the crack starts as a hairline and goes into a 1-inch wide root. Basic, that's basic. And we're not talking about support roots, we're going out into the perimeter. Fire, gee whiz, they've been keeping these trees very nicely pruned and thinned. I don't feel like there's much of a threat there, personally. The real issue, I think, if the vote was to preserve the trees, is the routing of the driveway, which is very unfortunate. Can't be a direct route to the street, has to curve around the northern pine tree. If the vote is to keep the trees, special measures will be needed to preserve the roots, the support roots of that particular tree. But I urge you to deny the application. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McPherson. I am going to move to online comments now.
Scott Detmer, when I call on you, please unmute yourself and then speak for a maximum of 2 minutes.
Great. Hopefully you can hear me, and we appreciate this opportunity to present to the commission on this issue that's important to us and to our neighbors. I'm Scott Detmer. I also have here with me my wife, Lisa Detmer, and obviously we're the applicants for the replacement of the stone pines. When we started the project, we thought we'd be able to keep the two trees. But as we got further into the project, and after hearing from our neighbors, we felt it was important to seek approval for the replacement of the trees. I know you've all received lots of materials from us and from many of the neighbors supporting the replacement of the trees. And most notably, you've received letters and photos from our immediate neighbors who are most affected by the two trees, Danny Siegel and Harriet Whaley and their families. And they obviously are expressing their strong support for the replacement of the trees. As you can see, we're all concerned about the damage that the trees are causing, as well as the danger that they pose to our home and our neighbors' homes. Our contractor has informed us that, among other things, the damage that we're already observing to our garage floor and foundation will continue and will worsen, and it's not really subject to remediation. Harriet Whaley, our neighbor to the right, has submitted letters and photos documenting the problems the trees are causing on her property. I think earlier there was some comment that her house her and her husband's house was unaffected. It certainly is affected. To the extent that they have a damaged driveway, they want to repair it, and they aren't able to repair it because they know that there would be continuing damage. And you've obviously heard from our wonderful neighbor to the left, Danny Siegel, about the damage to his property that's continuing, and his wife's concerns
So I'm
about the
going to need you
dangers
to
of the
wrap up.
trees.
I'm sorry. I'm going to need you to wrap up. Your 2 minutes is up.
We are concerned about the dangers. We're concerned about continued insurance. I think that's going to be a significant problem for us, and we very much hope that you can approve the removal of the trees and replacing those with some trees that better fit with that Mesa neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank-
much. All right. Okay. And is there anybody else?
No, Chair McGill, there's no one else.
Okay, thanks. Okay, with that, I will open it up for questions, and I have a few questions, but I'll start elsewhere. Vice Chair Clark.
So I had a question. Because I was unable to attend the STAC meeting, and Mr. Slack, maybe you can fill this in for me, but if STAC's recommendation to deny removal was based on that the proper procedure wasn't followed in terms of coming to STAC before submitting designs, is that a fair statement?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Clark, I don't think so. I think it was more objective in relation to the value of the trees on site and their contribution to the property. We made reference to that in the report, and that was
yeah.
brought up, but I think that was, I think when you listen to, Mr. Detmer, and I talked to him on the phone, and we've interfaced quite a bit, that they went into this process with the intent on retention of the trees. I don't think that there was any sneaky business in terms of.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that. I'm confused by the comment where it said the committee recommended the denial based on that the procedure was not followed as evaluation of the trees was not done before the design. I didn't understand what that was trying to tell us.
It sounds like a poorly written staff report.
Okay,
I wrote it.
Okay, no,
Sorry. But in all seriousness, that wasn't the driving factor. I think
Okay,
what they asked me to do was reference the sort of their struggle with the driveway being so close to the tree and retention. So it sounds like I poorly worded it in the staff report.
Okay. Sorry, I was just confused.
Okay. I've got, I guess, a couple of questions, and then my big my come question. So the comments on fire risk, I know we've had lots of conversation in the past about healthy trees not necessarily being a significant fire risk. I can personally attest to all the cancellations going on right now. But can you comment on just the general conversation on fire risk versus healthy trees? And I do know that debris is not normally a cause for removal.
Chair McGill, Commissioners, so I think it's worth mentioning, as Mr. Lynch pointed out, that we're seeing unprecedented cancellations for a myriad of reasons, and sadly, some of those are tree-related, even though they're not usually of merit. After seeing some of the letters and knowing the concerns, I met with one of the wildland fire prevention specialists today to look at the trees. And in general, and I think everybody's entitled to their own personal opinions, but in his opinion, as a fire professional, the trees in a maintained state like this are very low risk in terms of true fire hazard potential, even with the utility lines close by. So I can't remember the exact verbiage that he used, but essentially for those trees to truly ignite, you're seeing structure fires already on site. So, the conifers do have a higher flammability than, say, broadleaf trees in general. And he was explaining that you would, if, say, an ember hit that canopy, you might see like a flash fire of 5 minutes where dead debris burns, and that's pretty much the extent of it. So, that's not fun either. certainly. But in terms of an objective evaluation, the trees are relatively low fire risk, and they're not within a high fire hazard zone. So this section of the mesa is not within any of the city's defined high fire hazard zones. So on this specific property, there's concerns, but there's no like real objective fire concerns from the fire department's perspective.
Okay. And I guess I have a couple other questions from Commissioner, but since I'm going, I'll continue on. I guess I'm concerned when I see the photo evidence of not just driveways and sidewalks, but actual garages cracking. And it just brings me back to a not far past conversation we had about where is the stone pine in the wrong place, the wrong tree in the wrong place. I mean, we obviously just came out of a protracted conversation about stone pines. And their need for having, space for their root structure and the relatively shallow root structure. And first of all, my question is, are these the wrong trees in the wrong place? And would you distinguish between the two trees? Is one tree better suited than the other for this space? Because it's kind of how it looks when you go on the site visit.
And Chair McGill, Commissioners, I think as staff and as a facilitator of the process, I would prefer to not say whether this is like the right tree in the right place or not. I think there's arguments where you could make for or against it. So I would prefer not to like give my professional opinion on that, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Staff does not make decisions on setback trees. We just facilitate the process. So I think we're pointing out the committee's review, their perspective, and then, letting the commission hear, public testimony, I'll answer technical questions, and then the commission makes that determination on their own.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to start with Commissioner Nielsen, then go to Aldana, then go to Ramsey.
Thank you, Chair. May I ask a question of Mr. Lynch?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Lynch, can you describe in more detail kind of what you guys were talking about alternative plans for the driveway if the trees remain in place, and what those options that were considered?
Yeah, so we've relocated the garage door, obviously, to the front of the structure. So part of that, the driveway will move since the structure has been done and approved. And again, as Nathan was saying, and he is correct, our full intention was to initially keep the trees, and then after being on site, meeting neighbors, the Detmers, hearing from the neighbors and the damage, that's really what drove this. And so what we're going to do, if they're meant to be retained, at least the one on the north, is that we would just have to slightly kind of curve around some of the root ball. It won't really affect our back out. It'll maybe shift the driveway by a couple feet. So we don't really see any major impact to kind of the ingress and egress to the garage, but really it's just the damage the ongoing damage it's been causing. And the root ball, when we first got to site, it was almost waist high. So it's been trimmed back, but again, as you can see from the neighbors' driveways, it's far-reaching root system.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Aldana.
Okay, well, myself, I was able to speak to the property owners, Mr. Siegel. I spoke with him, and he explained everything that was wrong, all the problems. And then also, on the other side, they explained all their problems. So I would, to be quite honest, I don't know if go as far as making a motion if we're.
Okay, I'm going to say we're not there yet.
Okay, when you are, yeah, because if I'm not sure how many commissioners or street tree committee saw all the problems, and then the owner's willing to pay to remove the trees. I think everybody needed to see all the problems to make a valid decision. It's just my opinion.
Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Ramsey.
Mr. Slack, in regards to the roots, what further damage could they contribute to the neighborhood, street, public, civic, whatever it may be?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Ramsey, I think, we spent the two and a half or more hours, I think, a week or so ago, talking about, roots, stone pines, and the last year, really. I think it is a tree that does cause more hardscape disruption than other trees that we see in our urban forest. And I think that it is fair and accurate to say that, it is sort of like an undetermined cyclical event, so you would expect to potentially see it again, I think, in the future. If you have hardscape near trees, especially trees that have a big, large, robust, shallow root system, which is typically associated with the stone pine, that driveway, you fix the driveway, you could use root barrier and things like that, but to say that it would never happen again, it would be difficult to say.
Okay, so it hasn't reached its maximum.
In terms of mature size, I would say those are pretty mature. But the thing with the root system is you cut roots, the roots grow back, and there's always like a dynamic going on underground that we don't see. So I think just in short, there's, even with hardscape repairs, there's a probability it could continue to damage or new damage could occur.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Slack.
All right, Commissioner Nielsen, I have you, but you've already asked.
I asked a question, but yeah.
Okay, great. I thought so much. All right. All right, so that, I have no more comments or requests to speak, so I think I'm ready for a motion, if somebody would care to make one.
Yes, I would like to make one. I'll make the motion to disagree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee and approve the removal of both stone pines. And then with that said, as it says right here in the application, if yes, they would be replaced with one 24-inch coast live oak and 4 48-inch fruitless olive trees.
And we need a finding. If we're going to recommend a tree removal, we will need a finding.
Okay, I don't have my finding slip with me, but I would say for all the damages.
So the safety.
Yes, for the safety, and that would be in number E, for the safety of the persons or property that dedicates the removal.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a motion to disagree with the Street Tree Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second to disagree with the Street Tree Committee. Do we have any additional discussion? If we have no additional discussion, okay, I'm going to start with, I think the order I got it in was Vice Chair Clark and then Commissioner Nielsen. Okay, well, that's how it came up.
I'll be quick. I did, just because we have some new commissioners up here, I did want to let them know that normally we don't consider hardscape damage a good reason to remove a tree. So I'm saying foundation is different, but if we're talking about driveways and sidewalks and curbs and stuff, it's not, so far traditionally has not been a reason that we've used to remove trees. But that was just.
Greenhouses, foundations.
Right, I'm saying, I'm delineating, I'm saying sidewalks, curbs, and streets and stuff, just to remember in the future.
Commissioner Nielsen.
I think that's where I was going, so I'm just going to leave it there.
Okay, okay.
I'm also not equating a foundation with hardscape, I was just
Yeah.
trying to impart some.
Sorry, I am going to ask one.
All right.
Mr. Slack, how is the proposed plan, if these were to get approved for removal, how is that followed up on to ensure that that does get planted and the biomass is evaluated compared to what was these mature trees that are there? What's that process from this approval or denial decision?
Sorry. Chair McGill, Commissioner Nielsen. So what would happen is if the commission had a majority vote to approve the removals and condition the replacements as proposed, at some point in time, the applicant would reach out to our office and obtain a permit. The permit would include the language for the removals and then the conditions. And the permits are typically good for 60 days. We're flexible depending on what's going on. And then we just try to stay in contact with the permittee and make sure that we close the loop on all the conditions. So it would be just making sure that the trees that were conditioned were planted.
Okay, thanks. And Commissioner Ramsey.
And what's the recourse if they don't follow through?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Ramsey, in terms of just satisfying the permit conditions, you could get into sort of like fines, like administrative fines. That's something we typically try not to get into. Most people, I think, if you're willing to enter into this process, usually it's done in pretty good faith, so we have a pretty good success rate with people planting the new trees. And I think that the Detmers certainly seem like reasonable people and would see through on the proposal.
Okay. All right. With that, I think we should go to a vote and see where we are. And again, this is a motion and a second to disagree with the street tree and approve the removal of the trees. Well, all right. I believe the motion passed, did it not? Okay. The motion passed. So that's that. And we have one more street tree designation.
Chair McGill, Commissioners, the last item for consideration from the Commission from the Street Tree Advisory Committee is just a designation change. This occurs within the 0 and 100 blocks of West Pueblo Street. So this is 2 city blocks. One thing that I think that for the new commissioners, we've been looking at a lot of designation changes. The original designation listing, a lot of those have been around since 1977, so they've kind of fallen out of favor, or they maybe aren't as sensitive to like water considerations. And the city has a pretty aggressive, proactive water ordinance as well that requires new developments to, especially if it's like multifamily or commercial, to have all what we would consider lower, very low water use plants. That actually applies to street trees as well. So we've been revising designations to incorporate at least one low or very low water use species. And so there is a project going in at the corner of Chapala and Pueblo, and they're proposing new street trees. The existing designation is a very old, rare tree called a cryptocarya that's also medium water use, and you can't find it anymore. And so it necessitated a review so that we could get new street trees as part of this project. The committee reviewed the sort of species composition on street, the parkway width, and after review, made a recommendation to designate the coast live oak and the strawberry madrone as the designated street tree species for the 0 to 100 blocks of West Pueblo Street. And so for the new commissioners, we've been doing multiple designations almost always now, so you'll see 2 or 3 trees per street or street segment, and that's really just to boost the on-street diversity, so it makes for a much more resilient, small segment of the urban forest. And then having smaller trees gives us a little bit more utility. We can get a smaller tree in that one space where it just might not be suitable for a large tree. So that's the rationale behind multiple designations.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? Anybody prepared to make a motion? Any comments? Okay. Vice Chair Clark.
I would like to make a motion to agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee decision to designate the 0 to 100 blocks of West Pueblo with Quercus agrifolia and Arbutus unedo.
Second.
Okay. Assuming no discussion, let's go to a vote. Okay, done. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Slack. Might as well. We've been disrupted enough.
Before we move on real quick, Jill, I don't know if this is appropriate time, but at some future commission meeting, I would really, I think all of us would benefit from talking about changes to our urban forest plans regarding wildlife fires and insurance and what the threats are, because I feel like I'm not qualified right now because I need to hear more about what's happening with the insurance industry in people's homes.
Chair McGill, Commissioner Clark, certainly. In fact, I think what would be beneficial is to actually have a work session of the commission and the Street Tree Advisory Committee, which means it would be not likely in this chamber. It could be somewhere else where we talk through what we currently do, what the city's history is, of its urban forest, the management plan, and the key issues that the community is facing moving forward.
Yeah.
So it's been sort of in the back of my mind to figure out a good time to bring both the committee and the commission together. There's quite a bit that we'd want to cover, so it will be a longer session. I would also like to acknowledge that Commissioner Lesnar Buxton has asked that we include accessibility as part of that discussion, so that would be something that we would also include.
Yeah, I mean, just echoing it, it's just in the time I've been on the commission, there's just been a really strong evolution. I mean, I would call it a sea change almost in how we're talking and thinking about trees and the issues that are facing us. It's just, it's a moving target, so it'd be a really good conversation to have.
Yeah, and Chair McGill and Commissioners, as you have experienced and will continue to experience as an urban community matures and changes, the decisions that were made at one time to plant trees and where to plant trees and the type of trees to plant may not always seem consistent with what we need today.
Right.
And so some difficult decisions have to be made as a result of that. We're very fortunate in that we have over 450 different species of trees in Santa Barbara, which is very, very, very unique. We've got lots of ones and twos, but we also have a number of large trees that are performing just fine and provide fantastic canopy depending on what street that you're on. The drought definitely had a significant impact on the health of our urban forest. And then also just the increasing development of property, changes to infrastructure. We recently, well, not recently, probably 10 years ago did an infrastructure analysis, which we looked at all the conflicts that we have with infrastructure associated with trees. It doesn't mean we're cutting all those trees down. It means those trees have to be managed in a certain way to maintain them while still balancing the urban infrastructure. And sometimes that's completely possible, and sometimes it's not very possible.
Yeah. And hence the difficult discussions. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. I look forward to that. I think it will be time well spent. Yeah. All right, with that, let us move on to the director's report.
So Chair McGill and Commissioners, we have the director's report, and then we also have your capital improvement plan. And so staff is happy to continue to plow through the agenda unless there's a desire for a break. I'd also like to recognize that 3 of the department's managers are here. Tina Nelson, who's our business manager, and Jasmine LeBlanc, who is our assistant director, and then Simone Herrera in the back is our parks manager. Even though I'm going to do most of the talking as we move forward, nothing that I have to say could be done without an incredible team of both management staff, supervisory staff, and the line staff that we have in the department. When we get to capital, there'll probably be way more questions than we have time to answer. It's kind of a teaser. We will be back with more information as we continue on. So would welcome questions or we can also do some follow-up.
So unless anybody's got a burning need for a break, I'm going to suggest that we just plow through.
Okay, great.
Okay, and why don't we do the director's report, 'cause that's usually pretty straightforward, and then into capital.
Sure. So Chair McGill and Commissioners, as we do every month, we give you kind of a report on things that we think you might want to know if you don't know them, particularly as they relate to activities in our parks and/or programs and services that the department is providing. It's January, so you think, oh, there's probably not a lot going on. Well, that's not always true in Parks and Recreation. We had our annual Rose Pruning Day at the A.C. Postel Rose Garden, which is located in Mission Historical Park. It is a fantastic event. For many, many, many years, we've had year-round volunteers and then had an annual Rose Pruning Day. As you can imagine, during the pandemic, that wasn't so possible, but the resurgence of interest of members of the community to participate in the pruning day is fantastic. So in this last year, we had 135 people show up for basically a 2-hour stint on a Saturday. Our staff are there, park staff, to help teach people how to prune roses. We have lots of people that show up that do know how to prune roses. And then we also work with Dan Bufano, who's a well-noted rosarian, and he does trainings. And then the master gardeners also assisted with making sure people's pruning devices are clean. You would think, oh, do you really need to do that? Well, actually, you can introduce disease to a plant if you bring it from somewhere else. So that was super successful. And also, even though it's January, summer camp registration opens on Monday. And we reported to the commission back in December that we actually put a teaser out there so that parents could actually look at all the different options before it went live and hopefully try to map out their child's summer camp program. So we go live on Monday, and we have a wide variety of summer camps that we offer. I would note for our new commissioners in particular that the city actually, the department just staffs 2 of those camps. We work extensively with contractors that provide all sorts of camp services, and that's how we ensure that we can provide a broad range of opportunities for youth. And it's not just fee-based camps. We have a summer fun program which is housed at a local elementary school, and that is funded by the city entirely with, in addition to a small grant that we get from the Wood Claessens Foundation. And then our camps provide opportunity for teens to sort of gain job skills. They can come in as junior counselors, then they can come back as camp counselors or lifeguards or swim instructors. And we have many people that have actually come back to camp year after year after year and have progressed through our system. So we're hoping and anticipating that we'll have another popular summer camp season. The back of your staff report outlines how people can find out about them, but also how they can find out if they want to work for the city during the summer. We pride ourselves in being one of the first employers of many young people in Santa Barbara where they begin to learn their professional skills. So happy to answer any questions that you might have about that report.
Okay, thank you very much. It's always a good report to read. Thanks. All right, on to capital.
Uh-oh. Excuse the technical difficulty. I have to operate the PowerPoint even though I can't see where we are. Down at the bottom. There you go. Perfect. Thank you. Perfect. Okay. So with this presentation, actually, no, it's F5. Can you hit F5? It's not on the slideshow. All right, starting again. Chair McGill, members of the commission. I'll quickly walk through, provide you a broad overview with our proposed capital improvement program, and I'll preface my remarks with this is often what appears to be a wish list, but there's a method to the madness, because not all these projects will be approved for funding, either recommended by the city administrator or approved by the city council, but it gives us a plan for going forward. It also gives us the opportunity to consider how long something will take, how much it will cost, and very specifically how we would prioritize projects over the first 2 years of what is always a 5-year plan. We're going into a 2-year financial plan for the city, so starting in fiscal year 26, which is July 1st, 2025. And as part of that, we sort of update our 5-year plan. The focus this cycle is really on those first 2 years, because there's always a lot of uncertainty as to where funding might come from. So what we look at in our CIP considerations is, what are we working on now? What's a priority now? Have we identified unmet needs, particularly around deferred maintenance? It pops up all the time, like we didn't realize we had to replace the roof, and we have to replace the roof. So that becomes a capital project. We have people in the community, as well as commissioners, bring up ideas, and then how we might fund it, and what the purpose is, and where those sources of funding come from. And we try to be very opportunistic. So for example, back in November, the commission approved our application for 2 capital projects because we could apply for the community development block grant, which is very specific, but we couldn't apply for a different project. So we try to tailor what we do to the potential funding source. So we're always looking to enhance our existing services. We're looking to preserve our heritage and resources. We have a lot of historic buildings in our park system, as well as old parks. We also are trying to anticipate recreation trends, respond to some of the changing demographics, and we continue to experience those. And then sometimes we just have to meet a regulatory requirement. We have to change the way the facility operates in order to meet a new law or regulation. So quickly, just to give you some background on some of our current projects, we currently have a project we're about to go to construction in Alice Cook Park Memorial Garden. It'll deal with safety and accessibility, repairs to the fencing, benches, and lighting, and our construction begins in February. Carrillo Gym, I've mentioned that before. It's currently under construction, long awaited, and it's only the exterior. So when we do a tour, you'll get to see what the interior looks like, and that is hopefully phase 2 in fiscal year 26. It will be really neat once it's done. Chase Palm Park. So Chase Palm Park is a fantastically popular park in the city. We are currently building a arbor on the patio of Casa Las Palmas. That's the little building on the mountainside of the park. And it's actually a remnant of the city's agreement with the Parker family when the property was originally gifted to the city as part of approval to develop a waterfront hotel, which is going to be built one day. If you notice the green fence that's along Cabrillo Boulevard, it's going to be in that location. As part of that agreement with the Parker family, we were to construct an arbor within Chase Palm Park. At the time the park was built, there was not enough funding to do that. Some funding was set aside to build it. So now here we are, almost 20 years later. The hotel's not built, but we are building the arbor, and we're putting it in a location that will really enhance the park, both use of the building and enhance the park. Hopefully that'll be done in April. It may take us as long as June to complete that project. Ambassador Park, for commissioners that aren't familiar with where that is, that's a little patch of grass down at West Beach, and it has the 2 rows of palm trees. It is a cultural heritage site for the city. It is part of the original Sistun Chumash village. It's named Ambassador Park because it's actually part of the original Ambassador Hotel tract. It's the only remnant of that hotel tract. Working with the Coastal Conservancy and local Chumash people, we've developed a conceptual plan. This was before the commission, about a year ago at this point. We're hoping that our grant funding through the Coastal Conservancy will be coming through in April or May, and we'll be actually begin sort of going into the final design for that project. Douglas Family Preserve, Commission probably remembers a lot of work has been done there recently through the benefit of a CAL FIRE grant that we have, but also the Park Foundation. We still have more work to do related to trail improvements, habitat restoration, and ultimately a long-range plan to build an accessible trail through that park, because it's currently not accessible. Dwight Murphy Field renovation, this project's been underway since 2017, 2018. It's out to bid. We will get the construction bids next week. So it's very exciting. It'll be a major effort of the department working with Public Works and also the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation to build this park. As you can see from the slide, it is all encompassing. It's new turf field, it's a 30,000 square foot all abilities playground, it's parking, it's accessibility, sidewalks, new restroom. It's pretty significant. This park, as of this year, is 100 years old. So it came into the city's inventory in 1925. Franceschi Park, for those of you that are familiar with Franceschi Park, we've had that in our inventory since 1932. We have an original house that has fallen to significant disrepair. Back in 2018, council gave us the authority to move forward to come up with something other than a house. We recently reinitiated that project. We will be bringing it to the commission with more detail in the next couple of months. Our goals are to achieve safety, sustainability, and resiliency in that site. It is in the city's high fire hazard district. At the same time, honor the historical and the horticultural heritage of the site and the prior owners. We've been through some significant stakeholder engagement, and so we have a preliminary design that's getting developed right now. Ortega Park Revitalization Project, we have been working on this as long as Dwight Murphy. It's definitely taken longer. We're still working on our final design and construction documents. We don't have a funding source for this project. There may be opportunities to apply for grants later this year, which of course we will take advantage of. West Beach Splash Playground, for those of us familiar with Los Baños Pool and the defunct wading pool next to it, this site has been a challenge in many, many ways. The wading pool was closed during the drought because it had a leak. It also had issues with the pump system. It also wasn't accessible, so it wasn't meeting current health code. And although we came up with this fantastic design, which you see on this slide, it actually got placed on hold thanks to the pandemic and a loss of funding. And we're hopefully going to kickstart it again in this next fiscal year. Other things that we're working on improving all the pathways in Alameda Plaza. So that's the east and west quadrant. We have funding for that. Not so exciting, but very appreciated once it's done. We're working on renovating the restroom at La Mesa Park, and if you've been in that restroom lately, you will understand why. We recently replaced the roof, but we're also about to hopefully go out to bid for constructing that. Plaza Del Mar, which is where our band shell is, and we recently completed a significant renovation and upgrade to that facility. We're now working on design plans to address the irrigation in the park, recognizing that there'll be more people using it and really thinking about how to redo the irrigation. It's also decades old. And then increasing lighting in the park so that we achieve some safety objectives. Not so fun, not so exciting is the fact that we lost more of Shoreline Park last year, and so we're in process of hopefully finishing the repairs to that park. So proposed projects for the next 2 years, there's a lot. And I think, given the sense of what I just went over, I won't go over each one, but really talk specifically, if you see a project we're talking about and working on now, why is more money requested, is there's always more to do. So Alice Keck Park Memorial Garden has some more complicated accessibility barriers that will need more funds to address in the next couple of years. Chase Palm Park, a beautiful, wonderful park, but it's got aspects of it that are falling down, and we just need to keep reinvesting, redo the restrooms. There's a variety of projects involved in there. Our open space management initiatives, we have some wonderful open space parks, but they never get any attention, and it'll be an opportunity to improve trail systems. We also habitat, in some cases, address fire issues. And then very specifically, Los Baños Del Mar, so that is our pool. We have some structural issues that we're still defining. that are fairly critical. So the proposal is that we actually come up with some engineering drawings in the next year to figure out what we need to do structurally, and in the following year actually address those structural issues so that the pool remains open and usable to the public. Municipal Tennis Center, that is a facility that was built in the 30s, and it needs tennis court rehab, needs a variety of upgrades, plus it also needs a kind of a revision, and this is one of the things that we will bring to the commission at some point. We have pickleball there and on some of our courts. We have tennis on some of our courts. We have a stadium court that's largely not very usable because the stadium itself is in disrepair. And we have other sports? How do you say that? Sports that occur on courts that may not be tennis or pickleball. And so one of the things we want to be looking at is, can we expand how that facility is used to meet other sport court desires of the community? Boring things like field renewal and irrigation are really important. Simone Herrera spent quite a bit of time. We had some Recovery Act money to do field renewal. We have many irrigation systems that are decades and decades old. And so, asking for a chunk of money every year allows us to start knocking off one park after the other. Similarly, when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about benches, we're talking about fencing, we're talking about gates. Nothing too exciting, but something we have to continue to reinvest in our park system. Similarly, park restrooms, we have equipment that we need to replace, and very specifically out of this, and obviously playgrounds as well, two projects that I'll highlight very briefly, and I think I have some slides that will follow, is one, we've been trying to move forward with developing a master plan, a Parks and Recreation master plan, for many, many, many years. There's a lot of interest on the part of our city administrator that we move forward with that. So really, we're looking citywide at all of our current facilities, current conditions, current uses, evaluating who's using them, why they're using them, what we're not doing, what we should be doing, and then beginning to actually develop a plan of how we plan for the next 30 to 40 years of the city's park and recreation system. And then at the bottom is Plaza Veracruz, so that's the park that's on Coda Street between Coda and Haley. We successfully replaced, or at least installed a permanent fence. We have the trapeze folks working in there right now, but we also have a little community building that desperately needs some attention. We've applied for a community development block grant. If we also had general fund matching for that grant, we'd be able to replace the playground, do some more accessibility improvements within the park, look at lighting issues, and kind of couple the two projects and really basically finish what we think we need to do at Plaza Veracruz. And then I mentioned the safety improvement at Shoreline. There's always something to do. Anybody that's been to Schofield Park knows it's a funky park up in the foothills, and it's a funky park up in the foothills. It's beautiful. There's walking paths. It has a fantastic history, but so much of it is completely inaccessible, including the restrooms. So we sort of start chipping away at how we start getting at those things. And then similarly, trails and walkways, we're always looking at ways to improve our trails and walkways. Very specifically under the Urban Forest Management Plan, since this is something we've talked quite a bit about this evening. We have our Urban Forest Management Plan. Every year, about $250,000 has been set aside, and it's really been used to support either new tree planting or dealing with some significant deferred maintenance, because we never have enough money to manage our urban forests. In the next year, we're very much hoping we get funding to update our street tree and our park tree inventory. So back in 2008, a little while ago, we inventoried every single city tree, except the open space trees, of course, and it's time to redo that inventory. It will feed into the kind of discussion that's been raised by the commission tonight, like how we're planning for our urban forest over the long haul. So that's why the request is a little bit more than it usually is. So I mentioned some of the projects, and here's just some examples, the types of things that we need in Chase Pond Park related to infrastructure, accessibility, landscaping, restroom upgrades. Casa Las Palmas is going to look great on the outside, but we always need to give our buildings a facelift on the inside, so that's something we'd like to do. Plaza Veracruz, I mentioned as well, community building, matching funds for playground and park access upgrades, and then municipal tennis center that gives you a sense of the size of this facility and the opportunity. The court that's on the far left is our stadium court. And I don't know if you can see this, but this is the remnant of an old wood stadium that used to go all the way around the court. So if you ever watch Wimbledon, for example, or you watch any of these tennis events, you see stadium courts. It can't be used as a stadium court. It's been red tagged for longer than I care to admit. But it's an area where we could expand recreation and access. And then Hill and Honda Valley, these are some of our wonderful open spaces. We have the opportunity to really develop comprehensive open space management plans. We've got creeks within those parks. We have opportunities for habitat enhancement. We're also able to use some of the CAL FIRE funds to address some of the hazard and the wildfire issues, but not to do the comprehensive open space planning. I mentioned the Parks and Recreation Master Plan and what we would be doing, moving that forward. That effort would involve extensive community engagement, as you might imagine, extensive. And so we're just beginning to develop a scope of work of what that might look like. If it does get funded for the next fiscal year, we certainly will be bringing it before the commission as a preliminary discussion item about what that would look like. Trails and walkways, I mentioned. And very briefly, Tina Nelson, who's our business manager, actually oversees the golf fund and the golf course. We have projects proposed there. We're going to come back with a larger presentation to the commission about the golf course because it's a standalone, unique facility. The things that we're doing there aren't that exciting right now, but the reason why they were able to do them is that the golf is doing really well. So one of the things the pandemic did for us is it increased people's interest in playing golf again. So we've been able to reinvest in the golf course. A project that's currently underway that's not very exciting is a replacement of the sewer lateral, but it's kind of important. So we have a lot of things that aren't that exciting, but they're kind of important that are proposed. But we also spend, and John Craig, who's on our advisory committee, a lot of time reinvesting in the course itself and balancing, making the course better for golfers while at the same time making it easier to maintain and sustain. So lastly, to get to recommendations, every time we come forward to the commission, it's really hard to know how to make a recommendation on this laundry list of projects. But basically, are we kind of on the right track? And for our new commissioners, it's probably kind of difficult to know that. But because of the schedule, we're asking for questions, some discussion, whether you have anything that you are particularly would prioritize. And then lastly, giving you the sense that not this entire presentation, the whole citywide CIP or highlights goes to the Planning Commission next month. It goes to the City Council in March. It'll come back around to this commission in April as part of your budget presentation. And then ultimately, when City Council adopts the budget, we'll know what funding we have in our capital coffers in order to move projects forward. In the interim, we are working on projects, looking for ways to leverage our funding opportunities, and then always open to people's suggestions, and we have lots of them sometimes. And sometimes we can respond because it's easy, and sometimes it's really complicated. And I won't go into what those are, but when we do the master plan, we'll hear the gamut of things that people want to see in our park and recreation system. I think I have, nope, I don't. So I'll go back to the commission discussion. Happy to answer any questions. We would like kind of a general nod from the commission that we're on the right track, knowing full well that you will get a lot more information coming forward. This is not the only time you'll hear about these projects.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And
That was a speed
That was a speed
presentation.
trip through it, yes. And I was going to say, for the new commissioners, don't plan an early evening in April.
And Chair McGill, I'm sorry for interrupting, but your packet has details about every single project.
Yeah,
And so those are things that, you know, we're still finalizing the narrative and that kind of thing, but it gives you more detail and also happy to come back at future meetings to really delve into different projects, particularly if there's ones that commissioners tonight would like to raise as something they'd like to know more about.
Okay, Commissioner Nielsen.
Thank you, Chair. Could you please elaborate on that standalone bathroom improvement project? I didn't catch which bathrooms it was we were talking about at which park. You meant it was La Mesa, but is that multiple sets of bathrooms down along the beach?
Sure. Chair McGill and Commissioner Nielsen. So we're working on La Mesa Park right now, so that's up on the Mesa. We have, I'm going to lose track, Simone's here. I think we have 24 restrooms in our city park system. And so we look for ways to renovate them based on need. We ask for money, I hope I'm answering your question, every year because we have like this laundry list of park restrooms we'd like to get to, particularly ones that aren't eligible for community development block grant funds. So we've got Hilda McIntyre Ray Park, for example. We've got 2 at Schofield Park. And part of what we do is we look at use, condition, opportunity to address the restroom need without it being a giant project. So we have, like I mentioned, those areas. Both of the restrooms in Shoreline Park need an upgrade. The restrooms in Chase Palm Park need a facelift. So we look at kind of like what makes sense given all the other things that we're working on that we could potentially sort of get a restroom done. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and I guess more specifically, the ones that are just east of Ledbetter, adjacent to Ledbetter Beach there,
sure.
That's not the one you were talking about. You're up at La Mesa was the one.
Chair McGill, Commissioner Nielsen, no, actually that restroom is maintained by the waterfront department. So for folks that use the Ledbetter Beach area and the outdoor showers, they initiated a process to renovate those restrooms. I think they're going to come back with another proposed approach to doing those. I don't know what their schedule is, but I'd be happy to find out and report back.
Thank you.
This is the one where the shoreline takes that bend around into Meg's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. Thank you.
Commissioner Aldana. And then
Okay, I just have a question. On the West Beach Splash Playground, that's where the kiddie pool used to be, correct? Or where the kiddie pool is?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Aldana, would you repeat
West Beach Splash Playground?
what's the status?
No,
Where is
that's where the kiddie pool is now?
Yes, where the
Yeah,
kiddie pool is now.
Okay. And there'd be $0 on the next, so we're gonna, if all possible, if we could expedite that just a wee bit.
In terms of the funding?
Yeah, if
So, Chair McGill, Commissioner Aldana, so that project, we had, don't quote me exactly, I can give you more, about $500,000 to do the design. And so what we do when we start a project is we do some community outreach, we come up with some conceptual plans. What you saw on the screen was something we took to the Historic Landmarks Commission a number of years ago, working with a consultant because it's in the El Pueblo Viejo district. It's next to the pool, which is registered on the National Register of Historic Places. And then we sort of pulled back from that because once we started doing sort of the analysis of what it would cost, as well as not being 100% certain whether we'd have to build a restroom in order to operate a splash playground. Plus, we also have nesting birds and the ficus trees there. It became really sort of complicated, and then we had the pandemic. So in moving forward, we sort of need to not quite start from square one, but start again and look at what are the options for renewing this space for a recreation facility, and what does that look like, and what is feasible. And there's competing interests, as one might imagine, and then there's also, what does the city, what does the community want to invest in that site? So probably when it's all said and done and we've done some sort of preliminary studies, it's somewhere around $1.5 to $2.5 million to bring that back into a viable recreation space, whether it includes some water features, whether we try to do another wading pool because some people want another wading pool, or whether we scratch water altogether and actually build a much larger sort of youth recreation opportunity or phase in some adult recreation. The little playground that's adjacent to it that looks like a little mini tugboat ship, that's all part of that same site. And so part of what we may need to do is look at the whole site and like not just set it aside as not part of it, but like sort of revision the whole site. That helps.
Yes, it does. And when do you foresee an update, you know, and maybe because you said pre-COVID,
Yeah.
and I do remember the beautiful presentation many years ago.
Right.
When can we bring it back on the table? And
Chair McGill, Commissioner Aldana, I hope in the next fiscal year, in part, we had some of the funding restored. There is clearly interest from the community, Parks and Rec Commission, Harbor Commission, to do something there. We're currently in the process of recruiting a new planner. Those of you that remember Sean Stewart, who worked for the department, he actually has gone back to work for the county, so we're in the process of recruiting a new planner, and that will be one of the projects that I hope to have restarted, and really, you know, stepping back and restarting it versus just picking up from where we left off. That's the best response I can give you right now.
Okay, thank you. And just one other question on Ortega Park, the 500,000, what would the community or the department receive for 500,000?
So yeah, Chair McGill, Commissioner Aldana, we're requesting some more funding for that project. We're currently at the end of the funding that we have. When we go into and work on final plans and construction documents, we always find there's these unexpected additional technical studies we have to do to solve a problem. So we need some funding for that. We also know that the site contamination, soil contamination issues are pretty significant. So for our new commissioners, that was a dump for the 1925 earthquake. And so in order to really renovate and revitalize that park, we need to deal with the hazardous soils that are underneath. We need to better understand what that means. So hiring a firm to actually do a more detailed study of what it would cost to abate the soil and deal with that before we even build a new park. So that is why the request is that amount. And then the idea is a larger amount of funding, and it shows 4 million in the account. That would be the first thing we would do, is actually have to do all the soil abatement before we did anything else, built anything new.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner Ramsey.
Thank you, Chair McGill. 3 concise questions. I was turned away from Los Baños today because the water pool heater broke, something along those lines. Doing these repairs, do you expect the pool to be open for longer hours to serve more members of the community, as now it's pretty tight window to go swimming and it's very crowded?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Ramsey, you have identified one of the most critical problems Santa Barbara has, and that is we don't have enough aquatic facilities. And Los Baños, in the way it's programmed, makes it only available for lap swim and for the general public, as well as we do a lot of swimming lessons, particularly in the summertime. The boiler issue that we're currently addressing has to do, we have to maintain and do some operations. It shouldn't be part of capital. It should be something that we're able to fund, the city's able to fund before we do anything else. Whether we can offer more hours, I'm not the best person to answer that question. We have to balance use levels, cost to operate, revenue that we see based on that, and then staffing opportunities. So there's a balance there. The city highly subsidizes use of that pool, and so having longer hours could be even a more significant subsidy, and the question is how many people would it serve? The Ortega Park project, the vision behind that aquatic facility is it does provide exactly what you're looking for, and that this community has been asking for decades.
Great, thank you. And in regards to Plaza Del Mar, I obviously walked past both today. What's the plan in the future for having the community gather around this new band shell that's been put in place?
Sure. Chair McGill, Commissioner Ramsey, we actually, and Chair McGill mentioned it a little bit, We have, working with our Parks and Recreation Community Foundation, established some lofty goals to do at least 4 community-free events there that we would try to fund and have happen. At the same time, we are encouraging other organizations to come forward and suggest events that they want to have there. We're hoping, and we anticipate there will be some festivals in the next calendar year there, so that as it gets used more, people use it more. And so part of our objective with the irrigation and the lighting is it also makes it even more attractive. It's one of those areas where we need to work steadily towards building community recollection and understanding that it's available. And so we're starting on that. And we have a couple of events that were held already in the last calendar year, and then some things coming up in the spring, which will be, if they get solidified, we'll be able to promote.
Thank you very much. One last question. So, of the whole wish list, in your mind, what would serve the most community members and just the broader general public in terms of, making an impact for Santa Barbara?
Chair Miguel, Commissioner Ramsey, that's a great question. And the 2 that we've been working on for many, many years, the Dwight Murphy Field renovation is right up there. And so it's been prioritized by the City Council as well. And then Ortega Park, absolutely. It's a highly underutilized park that has had so little reinvestment for so long. And then, although it wasn't really discussed, or I didn't discuss that much in my presentation, we would really like to take Spencer Adams Park, and most people are like, where is that? So it's actually so we have 1235 Chapala, which is on Chapala's side, the Lees Lowry Davis Center, and the Long Bowls facility. That whole facility, plus all that asphalt, is a city park. With increasing interest and desire for people to live downtown and build housing downtown, we anticipate we will have an even more significant interest in recreation opportunities downtown. And that is our last site where we could actually do something that would meet the long-term needs of the community. So part of what we try to do when we're looking at these, for us, larger sites, which are tiny and compared to some cities and their park systems, is how many different generations and what's the broad reach of the socioeconomic benefit of that redevelopment.
Great. Thank you for your time, and thank you, everyone in the room, for your hard work.
All right. And I guess Dwight Murphy isn't on this list because it's basically.
Chair Miguel, Dwight Murphy, yes, for our new commissioners and maybe some of those that don't, we have the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation has raised $6 million toward the All Abilities Playground. We have a fantastic relationship with that foundation. They've also supported the planning and the design. The total project cost is about $24 million. And the city matched the $6 million for construction with the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation, and then as part of the bond issuance for the police station, included money in the bond issuance to make up the difference for Dwight Murphy Field. Without going on ad nauseum, one of the challenges we face as a community when it comes to finding large sums of grant money is the sources of funds, particularly at the federal level, are very, very limited to neighborhoods of the greatest economic need. With the most recent census, the census data became very skewed in that we believe it did not adequately capture the diversity of families that live in our community. So our opportunity to apply for funds is based on how we fit into a federal box. And so Dwight Murphy is an example where we had hoped to secure a $10 million grant, but we fell just slightly out of the poverty range for that site. So that's partly why the City Council took a very bold step and included it in the bond issuance, and will enable us to really implement pretty significant change in the neighborhood.
And Commissioner Nielsen.
Thank you, Chair. Can you please comment on the relationship between when we do these big capital investment projects and then how the budget is reconciled for ongoing repair and maintenance to make sure that they're operable after it's been made beautiful from the get-go?
Yeah, Chair McGill, Commissioner Nelson, excellent question, and we have to ask that every single time we do a project. We strive to achieve projects that require less or the same amount of maintenance, and some of it is, you know, when you repair and you replace and it's new, you're hopefully not going back in and having to do, you know, regular maintenance. When it comes to these larger projects, like Dwight Murphy, sort of field maintenance, we anticipate will go down because we are putting in a multi-sport artificial turf field. The cost to maintain the playground will be significant, but part of our agreement with the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation is that they raise an endowment for that maintenance. And then similarly, or very differently, with Ortega Park, we probably will incur additional O&M costs because we want that park to continue to be accessible to that neighborhood, which often has a lower ability to pay. Plus, aquatic facilities are wonderful things that cities and city governments should provide to their community, but you don't get rich operating a pool. So it's like balancing what we generate revenue for versus what we continue to make sure we provide for free to the community. When we go to our budget discussion with you in April, that'll be amply clear of how we set our cost recovery policies based on need, availability, cost to provide the service, and how many people it serves. So when it serves a broader cross-section of the community, there's a greater reason for the city to go, no, we should be helping make that happen. If it's only supporting a very small, narrow segment of the community, particularly a community that has the ability to pay, then it's not benefiting the broader community, but it's still a good thing to do. So that's when our cost recovery policy we would try to recover a higher amount of the cost to implement the program versus a lower amount of cost to implement the program.
Thank you.
All right.
And lastly, Chair McGill, if I could just add, we also, which I haven't gone in any detail, we have partnerships with organizations throughout the city, and sometimes they're just using our facility to provide a program. And so our role is just to make sure it's usable. Their role is to figure out how to actually have the public use it, and that's a key aspect of what we do.
Okay, and I know you're looking for a nod from us, so that, and I guess and I think I know the answer to this largely because a lot of it's Dwight Murphy, but I'm always a little bit worried when I see all the big numbers sliding out to the right. And so if you look down the fiscal year 2026, it's they're not little numbers, but the littler numbers. And the big numbers are kind of drifting to the right, which causes concern for things actually happening. Would you care to comment on that? I know that's just kind of a bit open-ended.
Yeah, so Chair McGill and commissioners, you do see some numbers, like you could pick Los Baños as an example. It's like, oh, they want to do some fix-its. And then there's this like 20 million thing way out there. Well, we know we have to do something to keep that facility viable. We do actually, and this speaks to what Commissioner Ramsey was also bringing up, are looking at how do we expand that pool as well as build a new pool to broaden its community use. That's so far out there because it's a big chunk of money, and we can't really pretend that there would be money tomorrow or in the next year or two. But we want to make sure it's still in the discussion. Like, we don't want to forget that, yes, we do need to get there one day. I think the Cabrillo Pavilion is a primary example of that. So that building was gifted to the city in 1927. We've been talking about renovating it since 1947. It finally got done in 2021. And it took 10 years from the moment we actually were really investing in figuring out how to renovate that facility to actually achieve it. And it cost $20 million. So it's like and sometimes it's opportunistic. It's like somehow the stars align and we want to move forward, and that's what makes it a reality. but it's not every year and it's not every other year.
Yeah.
If we had a dedicated source of funds for park improvements, like through a bond measure, for example, we could have a laundry list of projects that the community would know would get paid for out of that bond measure, which is what we often vote for at the state level, right? If you vote for a bond act that has to do with clean water or recreation or whatever it might be, wildfire resiliency, there's the laundry list of projects that then get implemented.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of one of these things, when I look at the list, it'd be really good to see one of these columns in fiscal year 2026 have 7 digits and not 6 digits.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I don't think we have the capacity to spend 7 digits on another project in the next year. I mean, part of it is the reality of resources, right? There's only so much anyone can do. We have a very small staff team, basically 3 people, and then we have other staff like Simone Herrera and our recreation managers and other staff that facilitate projects, but we don't have a dozen people running around doing projects. We use consultants a lot to advance things. Some of those things are not that exciting, like I didn't put on here like the rehab of parking lots, but they're stuck in there, right? But so we have too much to do and not enough staff resources to do them all. So it's part of it is
yes.
that.
Yeah. Okay, and I think, and then when you were asked the inevitable question of, you know, what's my top 5, what's your answer going to be?
Top 5?
You know, when you're asked to prioritize. I mean, I know from what you've been talking about most of them, but is there something, you know, that's beside, yeah, I know it's Ortega, I know it's Dwight Murphy.
Well, Chair McGill and Commissioners, I think some of that is based on what I believe we can do.
Yeah.
So part of it, just like anything, like any decision we make as individuals or in our organizations or whatever it might be, is like, what's really feasible? It's like, you have a house. It's like, well, I need to do a roof. I need to do windows. I need to redo my blah, blah. It's like, well, you know you need the roof. And you know, so it's like, how do you prioritize? And part of it is we prioritize by what's feasible in a short period of time, how much it costs, where we are in the project, and the value to the community. So in terms of priorities, it's continuing to advance those big projects like Ortega. It's building Dwight Murphy. It's funded, but it's going to take a lot of work to actually build the park.
Yeah.
And then it's also continuing to plan for, like the master plan, how we plan long range. And then at the same time, and folks in this room would nod, probably, stuff pops up throughout the year, and it's also being able to be opportunistic. Like, oh, we could go get that small project done. How do we do that? And that means sometimes priorities shift slightly, but we can get something done really quickly, and it enhances or advances an objective for the community. It's hard to answer that.
No, I know.
If I had a team of 24 people, it would be a lot easier, but I don't.
But you know, you will be asked to, it's like, okay, if I can only give you half of it, what do you want to do, sort of thing. Yeah.
So I didn't put the recommendation in a slide. That was my oversight. But if, you know, you received an update on where we are and sort of if you could sort of vote or take action that you believe we're on the right path, knowing full well that there's much more work that you'll be able to do and more input that you'll be able to provide as we move forward.
Okay. Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I think we've had a lot of discussion and we can have more if we need to. I'm going to, let's see, make a motion that we support the proposed capital improvement program as presented. Does that work?
Seconded.
Okay, and we have a second. And if we have no other discussion, let's go to a vote. Okay, and we have your support. You have our support. And thank you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And do we need to do anything else? Nope, okay. With that, I believe we are adjourned.
Oh,
I mean, she was a beautiful person, and
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, had I had a little bit of foresight, we could have put it under Commission Staff Communications. We had a long-term city employee, Anita Ho, who recently passed away. And for our new commissioners, it's hard to know what that means, but she worked for the department for about 30 years. She was instrumental in a lot of the adapted accessibility programs that we started a long, long time ago. In her post-full-time city employment, she was very instrumental in a variety of city programs, recreation programs, including the Children's Fiesta Parade, and then most recently and most notably, our culinary arts program. So that was a program that we offered at both the Franklin Center and the West Side Center for youth that are in high school, and that also worked with a local chef to learn basic culinary skills that in some cases position them well to go to City College to do the culinary arts program and or find jobs in the culinary field. So Anita passed away at the end of last year, and we will miss her tremendously, but she had a huge impact on the community in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, an extraordinary woman, and thank you for, isn't it? She did touch a lot of lives. All right, with that, now we are adjourned.